Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Members Only Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you're obviously you're not going to be new to this stream because you're a member, but if you're watching this after the fact and you're new to this channel, then be sure to subscribe, join as a member, and all that good stuff. Now, this is an impromptu members only live stream as we lost our connection to the usually scheduled live stream because my computer blue screen for no apparent reason, but we have got a full plethora of people here in the panel, all off mute, making loads of noise, so welcome to Righteous Force, Refracted Curvature, the Adam Meakin, Neil, Sleeping Warrior, Arwin, Brian's Logic, Chocolate Saiyan, and 10th Man Rising, together with a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome, one and all.
Hello again.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Well, we're all warmed up. This isn't a pre-show. So there's no need to warm you guys up. We're in the middle of a conversation, but for the fact that I've just done an intro and lost the live stream, you can all carry on as we were, right? Once I've made a few adjustments. That's my cue to say, look, I've got to press a few buttons. Please can you talk amongst yourselves?
I think what happened is because Nathan's computer dropped, we actually concluded the points in the background whilst Nathan was offline. So really what I was saying overall was that when Bev left that gaping hole where Ruhif asked, what has it got, if we go through this conversation, are you then going to say it's got nothing to do with the shape of the earth? And he said, yeah. That hole that was left by saying yeah has now been plugged. So really it's like, because Bev made it sound like it was conceptual and therefore reification, or failed to explain it sufficiently to make it obvious that there was a connection to geometry and the shape of the earth or the measurements of earth, then that omission is what made me think that it needed to be clarified why it wasn't a reification fallacy to apply geometry the way Bev does it. And now we've done that in the background, and now I'm satisfied that, yeah, Bev's not doing this properly. He's not doing it sufficiently.
Like, I'd just like to say...
what is Bev's claim?
Oh, sorry. Like Tem said before, I can't understand why people can't actually just visualize.
There's obviously a lot of lag today for whatever reason. Bev, yeah, it's because Bev didn't explain it properly. He just let Ruhif say that because it has nothing to do with the shape of the earth, then Ruhif would then have the conversation. But that made me think that it was conceptual only, not real world. So it was a mistake on Bev's part.
If it has nothing to do with the terrain of the earth, how can you navigate it?
Plus, you've got a relationship between the eye on the sea level and the GP at the sea level. They're connected.
No, what happened was.
Well, let me. Yeah.
I thought you were finished then.
Bev's claim to fame is the what? No. I'm sorry. No, it's okay. You want me to go? You can go. I don't care. I just want to say something.
No, I'd say it after you.
Who you want to go? Me or you? Okay.
You.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks. Bev's claim to fame. Yeah, thank you. Bev's claim to fame is the water level. We know what that is. It's a tube. You can go around the building that's on a slope that they're trying to build a foundation that needs to be level. And they'll take this tube, fill it with water, and they'll have one end sticking up at one point, and the other end, obviously, if it's down the hill, it's going to have a longer tube part sticking up, and the water will level itself out, and they'll be able to build the foundation level against the slope. Everyone following?
Yeah.
Okay. Sea level in Japan is 0. Sea level in the coast of California is 0. Everything is built above 0 sea level or measured below or above sea level, depending what kind of thing you're doing. When you take an angle measurement using Polaris, the North Star, you're able to figure out what latitude you're on. So if you have a 50-degree angle measurement to Polaris, you know you're at 50-degree latitude because 0 to 50 is right there. Now, for an angle, 2 straight lines meeting at a vertex, the minute Ruhif says angle, the minute Bev says angle, and they don't apply it to the Earth, they don't apply it to a baseline, they've screwed themselves. Bev, for whatever reason, I thought he'd be excited about the celestial navigation the way it's performed because it proves his water level. And Ruhif is just totally disregarding celestial navigation the way it's done and trying to trick people. Now, because Bev doesn't want to accept it or do any homework on it, he's going to open the door for Ruhif to get in his little trickster moves. In the meantime, we just keep citing the books. We keep doing it the way it's meant to be done. And you need an elevation angle. And you're using the horizon with a Mariner sextant. And the minute they say, well, I don't need that horizon if I use a bubble sextant, I say, welcome to flat Earth. Because it's the same result. And in the bubble sextant, you have an eye level that goes to infinity, where the GP of the sun hits and your GP. And if you get the same reading on the surface of the Earth using the horizon with a Mariner sextant, then welcome to flat Earth. Because what do you think height of eye correction is? It's to take the sailor with the sextant who's 10 feet above the sailboat, above sea level, and he brings his eyeball to sea level. I've quoted this. I've shown this. This is what height of eye is. It's the same as the bubble. Flat, level, elevation angle. End of story. Go on, Brian.
Yeah, well, what actually happened, the real problem was that, Anthony, you listened to Bev. Because Bev gives the impression to his audience that he knows all kinds of stuff, right? But what Bev does is, Bev, let's just say with celestial navigation, he dismissed it offhand, and he continues to dismiss it. But secretly, he's gaining information about it. And he'll, bit by bit, kind of use some of that information or speak about it. And it's obvious, I've been listening to him, it's obvious sometimes that he's actually learned a bit about something that he didn't know about before, something he dismissed. Bev has dismissed several things. He dismissed several things over the course of a few years that I couldn't understand why he was dismissing them. But then he learned them behind the scenes bit by bit. He's learning maybe celestial. I'm hearing him saying things that he seems to be learning bits about celestial navigation behind the scenes. Yeah, he professes that it's a load of rubbish. But why are you learning about it behind the scenes, Bev? Why are you learning anything about this if it's a load of rubbish? You know, with a magic book. Like, he thinks he thinks we're all crazy and we all follow a magic book. That's what he's claiming, basically. That's what's going on in his head. Anthony, do not listen to Bev.
He thinks that a book based on consistency of the circuit of the stars is a magic book. When we know that the equinoxes happen, the solstices happen, we know all these things. They've studied it for thousands and thousands of years. And so they are moving over the Earth on a consistent manner. That's why you can go buy a book that tells you where the stars are going to be every second, every minute, every hour, every day, every month, every year, from the year 2000 to 2050. And when I called to find out how they would know what it's going to be in the future, they chuckled and said, we know what it is thousands of years in the past and thousands of years in the future. The book would be too thick, so we just put it from 2000 to 2050. Oh, well, if we know something over the Earth is consistent and we can take angular measurements to it, we can know where exactly over the Earth it is. It's just that simple.
Good to know.
I think it's clear that Bev's going to need to change his tact a little bit, because if he's leaving holes in his explanations, I mean, I don't normally watch Bev. I only saw him online, and I just thought I'll go in and see what they're talking about. And when I heard him say what he said, I just thought, well, if it's got nothing to do with the shape of the Earth, then why are you using it? You need some connection to it. Either it is to do with the shape of the Earth, or it's not. But then it's a reification fallacy if you pretend that what's the point in using it if you're not going to reify it into existence as though it's the terrain in some way? But if it is directly linked to it, then that needs to be explained. And he didn't. He ruled it out, and that was a mistake.
Gone again.
Sorry, Adam.
Sorry, it was me. I was working. Done something wrong. Sorry.
Sounded like he said he's one of them.
Anthony.
I said I've done it again. I said made the same mistake.
Oh.
Anthony, they have all kinds of books to help in navigation. One is, to my memory, site reduction tables. And so what the sailor does is he takes his azimuth, the direction north in a clockwise motion to the direction of the luminary, and then the angle. And he's guessing at first. But then when he goes to this book and saying, well, if you've got that direction and you've got that angle, then you should be here. And he can make the correction based on his guess versus where he should be, because in the book it tells him at that second, that minute, that day, that hour, that whole thing, that to get that angle with this azimuth, he's really here. So he might have been 5 miles off, or he might have been, 200 feet off, whatever. The whole point is they've already placed everything where they should be based on seconds, minutes, hours, and angles and direction of the azimuth, which is done horizontally, by the way. So this is how you figure out where you are, because the whole Earth is mapped by the stars already, by angles and azimuth, and tied to time, day, seconds. Because it's the same movement over us.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I accept and I understand what you're saying. Just Bev.
Yeah, but Bev doesn't know that.
Yeah,
Bev doesn't know the intricacies of that. So he says, what can you do with an angle? Oh, there's just 2 straight lines meeting. What does that tell me? What does that mean? He doesn't know that the stars are mapped.
Yep, I do agree.
Well, then he shouldn't be talking about it.
Yeah, he shouldn't be. Anthony, recently one of the ballers, this guy Betty or something, was having some kind of a back and forth with Bev. And I can't remember exactly verbatim what was said, but this guy Bevy was talking about a right angle triangle in celestial navigation, right? And this angle was always a right angle triangle, something like that. And Bev was calling him stupid. He was just reading out some comments from this guy, and Bev was calling him stupid. Now, this guy is, like, don't get me wrong, this guy is a baller and a chancer. But Bev was incorrect on something. And I went privately and I contacted Bev through Discord. And I said to him, no, Bev, just so you know, in celestial navigation, an elevation angle is always a right angle triangle. Always. Now, a normal elevation angle doesn't have to be a right angle triangle, but in celestial navigation, it is a right angle triangle. And Bev came back and called me. He said, I don't need to hear your paralogisms or some nonsense like that. Like Bev just completely dismissed it. I tried a second time, just wasting your time. He doesn't want to learn. He wants to get it wrong and stay wrong until he has learned it all in the background, and then he wants to sound like he's maybe an expert.
I recall, Brian.
Bev always had some. Bev never says that was good that this person did this or that person. Bev doesn't give anyone any kudos in any way. Bev is only looking for the kudos for him. Bev has these little ideas in his head, and he thinks that he's not completely see-through, but he's not for most people.
Look, I like Bev. I consider him a friend. I like all those friends I made when I was visiting that channel. I remember a time where Bev even admitted that if you know Polaris with an angle, you know what your latitude is. How can he do that on the show once with me, where he says, well, if you know the angle to Polaris, you know your latitude right away. He admitted to that to me on the show when I was on once. It just came to my memory. Well, how do you know that, Bev? How would you know that? It's the same principle. So if the North Star is the North Star, and you can just put an angle to it from the horizon mirror of the sextant and bring your index arm down of the North Star to where it's kissing the horizon, waggle it till you get perpendicular and say mark, and it says 50 degrees, then you're at the 50th latitude. He admitted to that. The rest of the stars work the same way. This is preposterous.
May I ask, like, as far as talking about Bev this much, what does that have to do with Ruhib?
Nothing. I don't know. Anthony did it. I blame Anthony. It could be, Anthony, that because I've slowed down the clock speeds, the way the memory's been trained has been altered. So when I trained the memory at 5600, it was trained at the higher clock speeds. Therefore, it might actually be the case that by slowing the clock speeds, it's ballsed up the memory training. So you might be right.
I think it's more likely that because we were talking about Ruhif, the computer didn't like it, so turned itself off, because it definitely correlated, and it's therefore correlation equals causation applying according to most ball earthers. So just because we've talked about Ruhif and we get a blue screen, I'm wondering, is it because we were talking about Ruhif?
I will not say that I know for sure that is not the answer, but I can say that's probably not.
Probably not.
But I can calculate the probability, right, using the Spearman's distribution, the Spearman's correlation formula, right? So that would correlate mathematically to some extent, and therefore it's possible. So mathematically speaking, because we spoke about Ruhif, it is probably the reason why the computer failed.
You wouldn't be able to use Spearman's. That's a rank correlation. You'd have to rank everything first and then do it.
Yeah, but we could do it if we
use, when you've got really shit data and all you can do is kind of rank it. This is how crap statistics is.
Yeah, but you missed the point, though, Adam. Because we could do it, even though it would be bad. We could do it. That would mean that I could really argue that because we spoke about it correlated, and therefore it probably was the cause. That's what they do with their nonsense. Yes, obviously, I'm not endorsing this as a credible position to take. I'm playing the baller here.
We see your angle, Anthony.
Bendy angle or proper angle?
The angle of your conversation, the angle that you're taking.
Ah, so you can do something with an angle, then you can understand what the angle somebody's coming from.
The angle of attack.
Yeah. You can understand somebody if you understand their angle. So yes, comprehension is a beneficiary or a consequence of understanding somebody's angle. Sorry, Bev.
I don't know if I do like Bev anymore. I'm starting to not like him. Because I just don't know if I do like Bev anymore. I'm starting to not like him because he seems to be stuck.
Me too, Brian. He's a snake, Brian. You know it. I know it. You said it from the beginning. I went on that show. Supposedly they're really friendly. And I got nothing but attack with an F-wall with an angle. There's the enemy.
Yeah, that was I had a bad experience on one of the other hangouts one time as well. Not traumatic or anything, just like not a good experience. But it's just he's just makes a point of speaking in such a way as if he has what's the best way to put it? He speaks about others as if what they say is stupid, without him even understanding it. Like he calls the Nautical Almanac the magic book. I mean that, and even no matter what you do, like I've spent several times trying to explain it to him what it is and how it happens. He made a point of not listening. So that means that's somebody who's intentionally being either deceptive or ignorant. You know, it's one or the other. And he does hold the ball as the task and all the rest of it and blah, blah, blah. But he's only speaking about geometry and surveying. He wasn't the first person to be speaking about that.
Do you know what?
Just he spoke about it the most. He wasn't the source to be speaking about it. QE was speaking about it. I was speaking about it. I did presentations on the bloody thing. But I'm not looking for a cult following because I did a few presentations on surveying.
He's opposed to the swift destruction of the ball with the elevation angle. I got it.
Well, it's not his, so he doesn't want to have. It's not his. He doesn't. I don't know. I don't want to divine his thoughts. I just know that he is not somebody who is. He's nice to you. He'll be nice to you now, but he'll go and like a half an hour later, he's talking to someone. He's calling you an idiot. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Not in this consistent, but you never know where you stand with him.
What I noticed was a very obvious disdain for Nathan's show because he was talking about he gave a comparison where he said it's not like we want to talk about each other's balls or something. And he's obviously talking about Nathan's show. I was like, well, maybe you should address the points that are being made, because like the balls reference is actually teabagging, and you teabag somebody when you've got them cornered and they won't concede and they're dead. And he teabagged them as a result of it. So he obviously doesn't understand the context for the balls thing.
I'll give you an example. I said to him a couple of 2 years ago or more there. No, what am I saying 2 years? Several years ago, a couple of years ago now. And I brought up the ECEF system, which is a heap of nonsense, a spherical trigonometry system that tries to hijack Cartesian coordinates, right? Brought this up to him, and he said, nobody talks about that. Who brings up that stuff? Why would you need to know about any of that? And then I hear the ballers about a year ago or less talking to him about this ECEF and didn't know what they were talking about. Maybe that's the reason why you should know it. Do you know what I mean? And that's not the only thing. Like there's been, not often, but there has been often a time when my eyes go to the sky listening to bed. And because I tried my best I tried to be friends with the guy. I tried to kind of join in even what he was doing. And like some of what he does is good. I'm not going to take that away. But he does, like, you're not going to say he doesn't. But it's like if you're intentionally being dishonest or you're intentionally being ignorant, I mean, I just can't. I don't know where do you stand with Bev? Like, who is Bev? Where do you stand with him?
I was listening.
There's no concrete. You can never trust him. You know, you can never trust that if you're telling him. So what I find is that you can never trust if you're telling him something that he's not going to turn around when you're gone and say you're an idiot. Do you know what I mean?
To be honest with you, I was just listening to what he was talking about at that time when I tuned in, as it were. And because he basically negated the application of the angles and the trig or the geometry, he negated that in its application to Earth. He just completely ruled it out. That allowed the Ruif to have the conversation with him, which is what he wanted. So he may have just said it to get Ruif to have the conversation, but ultimately it's wrong, isn't it? Because if it can be applied on a flat plane and is applied on a flat plane, then the answer to that question is, well, when Ruif says, well, if I say this, then you're just going to say, well, what does it have to do with the shape of the Earth? And if I say it's got everything to do with it and you say it's got nothing to do with it, then the answer to that query that Ruif brought up is, well, yeah, it does apply to the shape of the Earth, because if you apply it to stars and navigation, it has to be a flat plane for those things to work. It has to be. Then that basically concludes the point, but it means that he doesn't get his conversation with Ruif. So I think he might have just been saying it for the shits and giggles to get the conversation with Ruif. But even so, it left me confused. What's worse?
Well, hang on. Then how could he have that conversation with Nathan about the lifeboat when Nathan gave him that example?
I don't know. Is the honest answer.
Well, I did know. It's obvious. He doesn't like the argument. Okay, let me just read one verse from the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 14, that talks about the fourth day when the Creator made the sun, the stars, and the moon, and what the purpose of the creation of these luminaries are. This is after he made the firmament, by the way, which was the second day. Verse 14, and God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night. Okay, so we have lights in the heavens to know nighttime versus daytime. And let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days and years. What is the purpose of the luminaries, according to the Bible, to be placed on the fourth day inside an enclosed firmament? To divide day and night, for signs, for seasons, and for days and years. We're to use them to categorize a month, a week, a day, an hour. And signs, what kind of signs? Oh, like an angle measurement to Polaris would put me at a latitude of 50 if I was to map the Earth.
For me,
what is that? That's an elevation angle. What do you need for that? A baseline.
for me personally, it's I don't like the biblical reference because I don't think, in the same way that ball earthers say the Bible's got nothing to do with the shape of the earth, I also think that the ballers basically they ignore the biblical or creation argument because they're anti-creation, right? So they channel that energy into this topic.
I didn't do it for them. I didn't do it for them, Anthony. I know people resist anything from the Bible. This is for those who hold dear the Bible and they could see what it matches celestial navigation, is what I'm trying to say.
I see the firmament and the star. For me, the stars are all the same distance away. When I look to the sky, they all look the same. They all look like the lights in the ceiling, as if you're on the dance floor. That's how I perceive them. Now, you can argue that, well, the dimmer ones are further away if you want, but to me, they're just dimmer. It has no correlation to distance at all, in my opinion. They're just smaller lights or less bright lights, whichever you want to call it. But I also see it as the signature of the creator himself saying, go on then, science, explain this if you can. And that's his signature. In the same way that Werner von Braun says, that the heavens declare the glory of God and the firmament showeth his handiwork, or whatever it is that he says. I do see the stars. I do see the stars as the proof of creation because science can't explain them. They can talk about it and pontificate about it as though it's science and astronomy and all that nonsense. But the reality is, when you look to the night sky, it looks like you're looking on the underside of the ceiling. That to me is creation.
Werner von Braun quoted Psalm 19 when he said that. That's from the Bible. So
yeah,
right. So what I'm trying to say, Anthony, is that when it says for signs, what kind of signs can it mean? It could mean all kinds, right?
Yeah.
And so we use it to navigate.
I don't have a problem with that, dude.
I know you don't, and you don't even have to be a Christian or anything. It's just that the biblical text works with celestial navigation, and celestial navigation works with the biblical text. So there's no contradiction there, is what I'm trying to say. It doesn't. I'm not trying to convert anybody. The point that we are here is, does celestial navigation work? And if someone's going to say no,
then they got a straitjacket coming because that's how we navigate.
I think it's the misunderstanding that they allow you to.
No, it's not a misunderstanding.
No.
It's not a misunderstanding. He calls it a.
You misunderstood what I said. I said I think it's the misunderstanding that they allow you to have. Not that there was a misunderstanding. They allow you to be misunderstood by it because they deliberately talk about it in such a way that makes you confused.
No. I watch. No, stop. I want to address that. There is no misunderstanding of how celestial navigation works because it's easy to find out. I bought the books. I watched the videos. I know how it works.
That's not what you said, man. That's not what you said.
Okay, go ahead. Interrupt, Eli.
But he didn't say what you're saying.
Why are you interrupting?
Because what you're saying,
you
misrepresented what I said, though, Ted.
It's one thing to
go ahead. Okay, interrupt the conversation I'm having with Anthony. Go ahead, interrupt some more.
Stop and go, oh, wait a minute, I'm strawmanning you. How's that? And it's another thing to say, hey, I was saying something. That just doesn't make sense.
I wasn't saying
I'm
what
glad
you
said. Oh, God.
I wasn't saying what you said. I said that they deliberately allow you to be confused by the topic of celestial navigation.
Who's they?
The anti-flat earth.
The people that put the globe in the celestial navigation books or whatever they're doing. Those people.
No, they're not.
They that are sailing on the sea and still think it's the globe. That's the day he's talking about. What's hard about that? He's not talking about you.
I wasn't saying he was talking about me, and I'm saying that within their own books is where we're getting the information of how it works. Just because they slip in a dingleberry in there because they got to reify the globe and must do a tangent plane to get the angle from surface level, and then say, oh, we don't get anything from this. It's actually coming from the equator, the equatorial plane. We broke through the magic spell that was put into those books. But those books describe how the elevation angle and the stars in navigation work precisely. And that's what I'm addressing. And when you bring that up, go ahead, keep talking while I'm talking. This is really going to make a good show. This is preposterous.
Well, okay, fine. If we're not going to continue, everything that you said up until that point that I interrupted wasn't contradicting Anthony. But I mean, you're responding to him as if he's contradicting you. That's what's making for it.
Well, you don't know what I was thinking or what I was doing because I was never allowed to finish.
I'm not worried about what you were thinking. I just heard what you said.
Okay, I'm done talking to you, Eli. You're just so much into your fallacies and to your things. You call it out before someone's done. And until the person I'm talking to tells me something, you just disrupted the whole conversation. And if I was wrong, I would admit it. But now we're discussing about your interruptions.
Okay, I interrupted because you were strawmanning Anthony. It doesn't.
I was not strawmanning.
You know what? Yeah, you did because you responded to something. Well, you responded.
I came at it from a different point of perspective. It's not a straw man when I'm not strawmanning. When I'm coming from a different point of perspective.
Yeah, but 10th, when I said that they allow you to be confused,
go ahead.
10th, when I said that they allow you to be confused. Your immediate response was to attack something that I didn't say. You started to attack.
They is who?
Well, we got that. That was the second point. But
no, when you said they, I thought you meant Eli. Stay out of it, please. You're adding nothing but confusion at this point. The day I thought you referred to in the initial statement was the people who show you where the stars are going to be and the angles and the site reduction tables and how you use the sextant. That's who I thought you meant by they. How's that a straw man?
Because that's not who I meant when I said they. I was referring to
Thank you. So then we are cross-purpose because your day is different than my day, and we would have figured it out. But I got called straw man when I wasn't even doing it.
Well, it was a straw man because we were applying they.
It wasn't. It was a misunderstanding. He misunderstood who you were referring to as they. That's what happened. He didn't straw man. He misunderstood who you were referring to as.
That was my response.
And when I was trying to be a part of the conversation and get into the conversation, Tenth got defensive. I was telling him exactly what you guys just spoke about. That's what I was telling him, but he didn't want to hear.
You said he's straw man. You said he's straw man.
That's not the first thing I said. I said, wait a minute, that's not what Sleeping Warrior is saying.
And then you're guilty of straw manning.
Yeah, but it wasn't what I was saying, though. He was right. He was right. That wasn't what I was saying. You took it the wrong way, Tenth. You took the they to be a different set of people than what I was referring to.
Yeah, but Anthony, you took my they the wrong way.
Right. You can't strawman an ambiguity. It was just a failure on Anthony's part to clarify. Now it's straightened out.
Right. So let's get back to the point that I was getting at. When they
before you do, Tony, can I just I was not here, but I'd just like to point out, guys, it's a full moon. Just remember that.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Good luck, England tomorrow.
It's not a full moon. Why do you think that's a joke?
Yeah,
you said it's a full moon?
Yeah, because everybody was getting super overexcited and very easily agitated. And it was a full moon. So, yeah.
Do you not think
that's what happens?
There might be trolling you.
If it's a full moon, then Brian's shadow is over. His argument wins out.
Listen, that full moon stuff doesn't work. I was so involved.
Yeah, it does.
Craziness that I'm doing. I didn't have a chance to have the full moon affect me.
It has nothing to do with it.
Anyway.
It has an influence on everybody's mood. It just does. I'm not claiming why it does. It just does. That's all.
Okay. So I originally opened my mic to ask, is this about the video that I saw titled, Does Celestial Navigation Like, what is it? Is celestial navigation a thing, or does it exist, or something like? I don't know. Some shit. Does celestial navigation work, or something like that?
It originally came from Bev Try Thinking when he was asked when Ruif asked him. Ruif said something along the lines of, he said, if we have this conversation and at the end of it, will you then say, well, it's got nothing to do with the shape of the earth, or something along them lines? And Bev basically answered in the negative so that it permitted the conversation to take place. But by doing so, it made it sound like it were a reification fallacy because it was abstract. In the consequence of what he said was made the conversation abstract. But it's not abstract. It's directly applicable because, as Nathan correctly says, you can use an angle to determine where you are on the earth. So if you are lost at sea and you know the angle to, say, Polaris, you know how far down the globe you would be on their model, or how far away from land you are on our model. So you can do something with an angle. So that I think that it's when Bev failed to say or failed to explain the importance of the angle bit when asked or challenged by Ruhif. That was what we were talking about.
Yeah, but Bev will tell you, well, you hired the wrong guy to run your ship.
Eli,
Well, listen,
that wasn't.
I give you.
Hang on, just real quick. Eli, that wasn't the original reaction video that we were going to do. It was John and Adam and Nathan were going to respond to Ruhif's video.
Ruhif's presentation that he made prior to having the debate with John.
Right. And we never got to it because we couldn't figure out that a fucking angle is applied from the surface.
Can I just say that recently I heard Bev say that QE's black swan is not a black swan. That should tell you everything you need to know about listening to Bev.
When I went
he
over
doesn't
there,
even understand the black swan analogy, I think. I don't know what's going on.
When I went over there, everything said it. I don't know. I'm not even going to pay attention. I don't want to dwell on what that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. I don't know.
I can't hear you, Eli. I can barely hear you. You're going to have to speak up a bit.
I'm just saying, I don't. Why would he say the black swan is not a black? I don't care.
Because he doesn't understand
because
the analogy.
He's a freaking idiot.
Yeah, he doesn't understand the analogy, and he doesn't understand modus tollens either, because he's what he was calling him. One of the things that's said is that MAUK says, mind your P's and Q's. This is something they refer to, right? And what she's referring to, right, and they have a little snigger when they say this, and what she's actually referring to is P and Q from modus tollens and modus ponens, right? But that's because they have it in their head that QE formulated the black swan incorrectly, and Bev's own modus tollens is actually incorrectly formed. You couldn't call it a modus tollens, but yet they're publicly stating that QE got his modus tollens wrong when he and that the black swan is not a black swan. You know, they don't understand what modus tollens is, and they don't understand what the black swan analogy it means. It seems, yet they're publicly stating that other people have it wrong.
It's not a coincidence.
So for the audience, 1 second. For the audience, remember all these things, and there's more. Right behind me listening to Bev. He does know certain things about surveying. I'm not going to take that away from him. But there's a lot of stuff he says outside of that you should be a bit dubious about.
It's not a coincidence that we find ourselves in a little corner here when we actually want camaraderie with everyone who's on our side of the argument against the globe lie. But we can't have a community when you've got these doctrinal differences. That's why you have separation in churches. When they don't stick to the Bible, they split. The one that went liberal goes the liberal route, and the one that wants the Bible to be God's word stays there. And this is why you say, well, how come there's so many denominations? Well, let's figure out how it went from one source, the teachings of Jesus for Christianity, to all these different ways that people say he taught. Okay, now if I take that as an example, and we say to ourselves, we want to stick to the truth, we want to stick to reasoning and logic, no fallacious arguments, etc., etc., and we have this high demand on ourselves to be true, then we find others doing liberal sayings or attacking us for this, calling us, scammers, or all of a sudden we find ourselves, wait a minute, these are supposed to be fellow flat earthers. Why can't we all get along? Well, we have a higher standard.
They're not fellow flat earthers, are they?
Well, no, they might be, but again, I don't know. But the point is, you got a point too. They may not be too as well. But the point is, I'm trying to make, is that when you have this high standard and others don't, they look at you different. It may not fit what they're trying to do with their YouTube channel or whatever in life they're doing. And so they, instead of saying, you know what, those guys there have killer arguments, recommend you go watch them, like Nathan does. No, they attack, they say things. And then finally, Nathan realized, I'm not going to do that anymore. So when DITRIGS talks behind Nathan's back, and when Jaron says stuff the way he has, but both of them send emails to Nathan for help on arguments, I mean, this is so duplicitous. This is so ridiculous.
Well, technically on a lower level, Bev has done the same thing, because Bev has come over here and he's promoted some of the stuff he was going to do, and he gave the impression that he had camaraderie with him. But then behind the scenes, he's making, on his live streams, little snide comments that are directly pointed towards this show and the people on it. You know what I mean? It's like, Bev is not on our side. Bev doesn't want camaraderie with us. He has no interest in that. I'm pretty sure of that now at this stage. Bev is either intentionally being dishonest or intentionally being ignorant when it comes to celestial navigation. I don't know. I don't care anymore. What I would say is, what Bev does know about, which is surveying and stuff, yeah, 100% listen to Bev. Bev knows what he's talking about there. Right? I'm not going to take anything away from him. Right? His shows are, I'm not going to say don't listen to his shows. His shows are entertaining. He's good. I'm not going to take that away from him. I will still listen to him. But that doesn't mean I'm going to like him, or I'm not going to end up turning my eyes to this guy at certain things he says. So people should be a little bit more dubious about it. Bev is not, it's hard to know who Bev really is because he never really presents Bev.
Well, I don't try to make it personal. I like Bev, I like Emma, I like all those guys. I consider, like I said, friends. Their arguments stink on this matter. And just what, because you're too lazy to go do the homework, you want to make snide comments? That doesn't make sense.
I wouldn't say the arguments stink. I just think that their arguments, like, Bev is not a flat earther, right? He's never claims to be a flat earther. And then there are people on the show, with the exception of maybe Rob Keane, I think, the rest of them say they're not flat earthers. But you can say you're not a flat earther all day long. If the public hear you saying something that's going against the globe, you become a flat earther, whether you want it or not. None of us are flat earthers. None of us are actually flat earthers. We're just pointing out what the world is not. Hang on, please. We're just pointing out what the world is not. We're not flat earthers. But we are labeled with that because that's how the public are trained to label us. And Bev can spend all day saying he's not a flat earther. The media will call him a flat earther. There's no way around it.
Brian, we know we live on an irregular plane. Okay, we know there's valleys, we know there's mountains, we know there's flat spots. We know this. It's just hard to say I'm an irregular planer.
Well, and to that, when you say I'm not a flat earther, so level is not horizontal or level is not flat. Which one is it if you're not a flat earther?
Well, see, there you go. His point is that because you have hills, mountains, and valleys, it's not flat. So it's incorrect to call it flat. But I've made the point to him that he didn't address. If you're an airline pilot, you can describe the Earth as flat because you fly over a horizontal plane.
Well,
so you're not dealing with topography. You're not dealing with topography when you're an airline pilot. So it comes down to the person and their perspective at the time.
Right, but topography isn't dealing with the issue because the height of the mountain is measured against what? Or the depth of the valley is, you know what I mean? Like, you're talking about from a flat baseline.
Yeah, Bev is straw manning the argument, right? Every time he does that, and he wants to do that, but he is straw manning the argument because nobody claims that the surface structure of the Earth is perfectly flat. It isn't, right? It's about the geometric orientation of the Earth's surface, and he doesn't address that. He avoids it and keeps harping on about the structure of the surface, and that's nonsense.
It's also, it's also not defensible in reality. So even a perfectly polished glass surface at the microscopic level isn't flat. It's just all you do there is destroy the actual use, ever the applicability of it, as opposed to comprehending the meaning of what we're talking about, which is what John was referring to, and Brian, the flat plane at which everything is referenced to.
Right, there's that fact that if you zoom in enough with the microscope, eventually you'll figure out that there is no such thing as a flat surface.
Right? But he'd agree with that. He'd say, yeah, it's three-dimensional. That's what he'd say. He'd say everything's three-dimensional in reality. See,
but that's not the argument, you see?
Yeah, but see, the thing about it is, you were right what you said, Arwen, that he strawmans the argument. What he does is he subtly undermines other people. That's what he does. To make it seem like they're a bit crazy or they're a bit stupid. And so then Bev has the truth. Yet Bev can't formulate a correct modus tollens. He didn't know what... I won't even go into the things that he... Yeah, he still doesn't.
There's something wrong.
He thinks QE doesn't know what a modus tollens is. He thinks QE doesn't know what the black swan analogy is. And he thinks that... he thinks celestial navigation is some kind of magic thing. Globe thing. I don't know what he thinks of it. He says there's a magic book.
Have you ever heard the term crabs in a bucket?
Fair, it is pretty magical.
Have you ever heard the term crabs in a bucket?
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
You mean Babs in a bucket?
None of them are leaving the other one get out.
Right.
None of them leave the other one get out. They always pull each other back.
So Bev sees us as a crab trying to climb out the bucket. He goes, "Come here," drags you back down. That's what it is. It's that mentality. Oh, yeah. Look at them. They're doing better than me.
In a bucket.
Better drag them down and undermine them as much as possible.
Well, is it that, or was he emotionally hurt that QE didn't give him a personal invitation to the unveiling of the Black Swan? Because that's kind of how it felt to me.
He had a personal invitation. He had access to join at any time.
Did QE call him up?
With the meet link, with the Google link.
Right. Did QE call him up? Did QE call him up and say, "Hey, I'm going to talk about a subject that you might have something to weigh in on. Why don't you come on over here?" Because he didn't do that. I think.
Yeah, but QE didn't call me.
Didn't call me. It's nothing to do with it.
Oh my God.
QE didn't call anybody. He just did it.
Hello.
Anybody, just did it.
Way to totally miss the point, all of you numpties.
Bloody hell, irony.
Well, there was an argument. There was a Bev come on and I heard QE and him have words about it, and that's what popped it all off, because he said, "Well, you were talking about my subject," is what he said.
Yeah, but let me give some history. Let me give some history here. 1 second. What that was about was a complete misunderstanding. Was that Emma and Bev were on the Google could join, were on in Master B, right? And they could join the Nations anytime they want through the Google Hangout, like whatever, right? Now, when the Black Swan came out, they were speaking about geometry and surveying and stuff, and QE told them, "Stop speaking about that. Speak about the Black Swan." What QE was trying to do, and I went into ranties and tried to tell people the same thing, just focus on this. Because what was happening is people weren't focusing enough on what was the absolute killer argument, which is the Black Swan. They weren't focusing on that argument, and they were talking about other things that were not as important at the time. He just wanted a mass, sorry for the term, focusing on the Black Swan against the ballers, because the ballers were getting taken apart. And it was when the ballers were scrambling to come up with some excuse, right, at the time. So when he told them don't talk about those things, right? He didn't mean don't talk about them ever. He just meant at that time, he was trying to get them to focus on the Black Swan argument at that time on their show. Just give it a bit of airtime. But what happened was QE then did a hangout where he was taking apart something from Jesse Kozlowski from 2016. And I was on that hangout because I also had dealt with Jesse Kozlowski in 2016 on the same stupid observation with things he was claiming about this, right? So because QE referenced Jesse Kozlowski, Emma got a bee in her bonnet that QE told them don't talk about surveying, and then suddenly QE's talking about surveying. So completely missing the point. Emma completely missed the point, and left a comment that was referring to her and Bev and others, right? But she used the word "we," right, as a group term in Master B, and then left, right? Left Master B. So then Bev, a bit later on, comes on Nathan's, and he didn't know what all this is about, and it was about that whole thing. And eventually, then Bev stopped coming in, and so they had it in their head that QE was telling them don't talk about surveying, and when they were like, and then they stopped talking about surveying and started talking about the Black Swan. Then suddenly QE was talking about surveying. Wasn't like that. He just wanted them to focus on the Black Swan at the time, just at the time. That's all it was. So they got their wires crossed all over the place and decided to have a problem about something they didn't understand.
But that wasn't my point. Right. That wasn't my point, though. It was an emotional reaction. And that's what we've been dealing with since then, is a grudge.
Yeah.
Right. Bev takes things personal. And that's how he does things. And he's unrepentant about it. He's not very flexible when it comes to that sort of thing, right? I mean, even less flexible than QE.
Yeah, but if it's a misunderstanding, then it should be able to be cleared up.
Unless you don't want it to clear up.
I don't think QE takes anything personal. That does.
No, he hates everybody.
Yeah.
When was that? I ain't saying that he
take
don't.
Anything personal, or he takes everything personal. You decide.
He doesn't. I've never seen him take anything personal.
Define personal.
What is this?
Feelings.
Gossip hour.
Yes. Members only.
Like daytime TV.
Members only live stream.
Members only
corner special.
Adam, go England.
I'm watching Croatia, Brazil.
See how quickly Adam lost his train of thought then. Well done,
Talking about gossip, by the way, did you guys hear that Jaren is going to go up with Dave and maybe Witsit too against Planar Walk now on modern day debates? I heard that that's going to happen soon.
Wow, Planar Walk.
So it's not going to be a shit show, I guarantee it. But maybe
Planar Walk is not exactly top of the game on the ball.
Yeah, no shit. He's a complete moron. But I mean, even he could win off Jaren. I'm pretty convinced of that. I think any anti-flat earther could win from Jaren because he sucks.
I've actually got to the point with Jaren where I wonder whether he deliberately argues badly as a flat earther on purpose. Does he actually do it on purpose? Because he's not great at debate, right?
Hamlin's razor.
Does he do it?
Hamlin's razor.
I'm not. I don't think it is Hamlin's razor, Nathan. I don't think it is.
Once you find out you're that stupid, right? Either you can quit or you can just use your stupidity. So I think that's the Jaren falls into the latter.
Well,
you realize that he's completely useless, but he's going to do it anyway.
But as far as Hamlin's razor goes, only if you're addressing stupidity. He has no reason to claim ignorance now. He's been out here for what, 2015? So ignorance is not something he can claim. So it has to be stupidity.
Okay. Don't attribute malice to what you could easily explain with stupidity.
Yeah, he's just negated that, Nathan. Were you not paying attention?
or the need of a paycheck. I mean, Jaren's been leaning on his streaming and all that
What do you mean he's
for fun
negated
for
it?
quite a while.
Hold on 1 second, Darwin. What do you mean he's negated it?
Right. Is Hamlin's razor based on ignorance or stupidity?
Ignorance.
Ignorance.
They're not the same thing. You can't claim ignorance anymore.
I agree. You can't claim ignorance anymore.
Yeah, so I said don't attribute to malice what you could explain with stupidity.
But that's not Hanlon's razor. Hanlon's razor is don't attribute to malice what can be explained by ignorance.
I understand that, and I rephrased it. I started off by saying, okay, fine. Yes,
That'd
it
be
isn't.
Oakley's razor.
Well, what I'm just saying, though, is he is either Flat Earth 2.0 or an absolute retard.
He's Flat Earth 2.0.
Or both.
No, he's not both. He knows. I think I've said to Nathan, it must be at least 12 months ago, I believe that Bob, Jaren, they push this story that they have because they are Flat Earth 2.0. And Nathan's like, you can't ascribe their motives. I'm like, yeah, but look at the evidence, though. The evidence is so abundant. It's difficult to argue in their favor.
How is this an argument against his stupidity?
Let's hear it. I'm intrigued. What evidence? You've been saying this for the last, I'm going to say 4 years. So what's this new evidence, Anthony?
Well, it's the accumulation of all the existing evidence. Like, you can get one or two.
Wow.
It's a preponderance of evidence.
I was just about to say the same exact thing. Preponderance of evidence, you say, Anthony. That sounds like Bob Nodell.
I'll come to Anthony. I'll come to Anthony's point here that he wasn't on the show, but for fact of curvature, you brought up the fact that Jaren put in statements in the citation, and you called that fraud.
Yeah, so that proves he's a fraud. Okay. Now let's.
Wouldn't that fall into that fall into part of the evidence that Anthony?
Hello. What are we trying
to prove? I'm trying to finish.
Yeah, but when you got Hanlon's razor that says "Don't ascribe to malice that which can be," isn't that the malice in question?
In this case, you're saying he's controlled op. You're saying he is what
yeah.
Well, if he's controlled op.
Yeah, but why? Why would he do that? Isn't that stupidity by itself?
Arwin. Oh, God, hello. Trying to have a conversation. No, I'm not trying to. You're trying to ascribe motivation to it, and I'm saying, what's the evidence? Now Arwin's added into the mix rather than evidence of being controlled opposition. He's like, well, why would they do that? No. I just want to see the evidence that he is. So far, you've proved he's a fraud. Okay. Doesn't prove controlled op.
No, but doesn't that evidence of fraud negate the argument of when you applied Hanlon's razor? Because that says, don't ascribe to malice.
We've covered that. I conceded. I rephrased it. That's why I rephrased it intentionally after the discussion about it not meeting the criteria. So I was like, okay, well, I didn't then say, okay, well, it's Hamlin's razor, and then changed it. I just said a different statement. And then even Brian was like, well, that's Oakley's razor. I don't care. That's not what I'm asking. I'm saying, what evidence? You've said there's a you didn't say a preponderance of evidence, Adam, but you almost did. You might as well have. Yeah. What is that evidence, Anthony?
Well, to be fair,
every debate I've ever seen him have, he presents badly. He doesn't present the good arguments. He always misrepresents bad arguments. He always goes back to stereotype fallacies. Every single debate would be the evidence I would cite. All of them, none of them are particularly good, Nathan. If you think there are good,
and he lets the opponent waltz over him every single time. He never cuts that part out. He always lets them shit on him and then doesn't have a good response. Always.
That's not what I asked. Second time out when Dad did that. Hello. I asked what the evidence of him being on some sort of controlled opposition, on the payroll for the government, whatever it is that you say is him being part of some group that stands in opposition. Flat Earth 2.0, you called it. What's the evidence of that? Not that he's a crap debater or a fraud. I can
my answer
make that.
He's a crap debater.
Synchronicity.
My evidence.
I was trying to get Arwin out of the conversation. I'm asking you, Anthony. I'm asking what your evidence is.
My evidence is, as I cited, every debate I've ever seen him do, he's particularly bad at it, and I know he can do better because when he's not in a debate, he can present the arguments that for some reason, when he goes into a debate, he completely forgets about. So it's like that is the evidence that he's deliberately putting on a bad show, in my opinion.
Okay, that's evidence he's putting on a bad show.
No, all right. It's the evidence that because he's putting on a bad show. It's the evidence that he is, in my opinion, controlled op because he puts on a bad thing on purpose. It seems.
Well, that's you entitled to your opinion, isn't it? That's all that is.
Controlled by who? Well, who's controlling it?
There's no evidence of any control. Anthony didn't provide. Why does Arwin do that? So what? Assuming Anthony actually provided some evidence, he didn't, Arwin. So let's not postulate it based on the evidence we didn't get. No thanks. Thank you for undermining me so much, though.
I'm not undermining you.
What, by assuming the premise I've just taken apart based on the lack of evidence, you're going to ask him about that and say you're not undermining me?
Never get involved.
Fucking hell, just kick Arwin out. What a wanker. No, Arwin, I just took apart his premise based on lack of evidence. Now you're entertaining the premise. That undermines me. Don't be a prick.
You didn't take it apart.
Don't piss down my back and tell me it's raining, Arwin. Arwin, you've asked him to entertain the premise I just took apart. That's undermining me. What part of that don't you understand?
You didn't take it apart. You dismissed it.
Based on lack of evidence, it's your burden.
No, you said it was
controlled op, you say. That's your burden, not mine. I don't have to do a damn thing. I just have to ask you. Why am I getting rumpus to all shit by you and Arwin?
Because you're misrepresenting what I said.
You gave me evidence of him being on a controlled opposition. No, you did not.
Yeah.
No.
No. So the evidence I cited is every single debate that he's ever done.
I acknowledged it. Yes, we acknowledged it. Poor show, bad debater. Yeah, we acknowledged all of that. You did not provide evidence of him being controlled opposition.
No, but what you then did was dismissed what I said and said that was merely my opinion. And that's true.
Who was it that said claims without evidence can be dismissed without evidence, Anthony? Who is it that says that?
Yeah, but So
who is it that says that, Anthony? Do I say that?
Are you disputing that the evidence
who is it that says that, was my question. You.
No.
Yes.
It's Hitchens' razor, that, not me. I cite Hitchens'
You say
razor.
it.
What?
You say it.
Right.
You
deny?
Right, so sorry, let me get this clear.
Do I need to show the evidence
should I,
for you to
with
accept
absolutely zero evidence to assert it, accept that he's controlled opposition when I've had no evidence to accept that? Why should I accept that?
Answer the question. Do you deny that there is plenty of evidence that shows that Jaron is particularly poor at debate?
As the judge, you've got to ask whether what you've presented is evidence. That would be the question first. Does it constitute evidence? And what does it constitute evidence for?
Because if the issue is that the evidence doesn't exist, I could go and get some evidence if I really need to, but I don't think that's in dispute. Unless Nathan says the evidence doesn't exist.
I absolutely dispute.
I've got evidence of poor debating.
I absolutely dispute.
We can all agree that there is evidence of poor debating, can we, Nathan?
Yeah, but that's
because that will prove he's controlled opposition.
No. We'll get to that. Is it? Will you accept it as evidence of poor debating?
It is. No. It is evidence of poor debating.
Yeah, snap.
Correct. So because it's evidence of poor debating, in my opinion, which you negated, that is evidence of Jaron being controlled.
On the contrary.
Now I accept that.
On the contrary. Hold on. I didn't negate your opinion. No. Stop.
Which can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence because the evidence does exist.
What your opinion? No. Sorry, you feel your opinion?
The evidence, Nathan.
What was the evidence?
We've just agreed that the evidence existed.
Of poor debating. Yes, Anthony, just talking non-stop doesn't help. Yeah, we agreed that you had evidence of poor debating. Then you offered up your opinion with a disclaimer of it being your opinion. I didn't accept that as evidence of being controlled opposition. No, I didn't accept that.
But what you then did was applied Hitchens' razor. And Hitchens' razor says that which can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. But we've just agreed that there is evidence.
Of being a poor debater. Of being a poor debater. That's not evidence of being controlled opposition, which is what you were charged with giving evidence for, though.
Correct.
But that is the evidence which I rely on.
It's useless. And was dismissed.
Because it shows.
And was dismissed because it was not evidence of controlled opposition. It was not evidence of that. Therefore, the challenge to provide evidence for him being controlled opposition was in no way satisfied. What was presented as evidence of being controlled opposition wasn't evidence of that, so it was dismissed.
Well,
Right.
hold on a second.
Dismissed it. Hang on, wait.
Some evidence.
It was only dismissed by application of Hitchens' razor. If you'd have dismissed it on the basis of a false equivalence or a non sequitur, that would be correct. But you did it with Hitchens' razor, which is wrong, because evidence was presented and we accepted it.
What's evidence? Evidence is proof.
Right. But
you didn't provide proof. You provided proof of him being a bad debater. You were charged with evidence of being a controlled opposition. So you didn't satisfy that standard, Anthony.
But you've applied the wrong standard, Nathan, by applying the Hitchens' razor.
No, I haven't.
What you should have applied was non-sec or false equivalence, but not Hitchens' razor.
No. You didn't provide any evidence for your specific claim. You provided evidence for a different claim. That's not providing evidence, therefore Hitchens' razor applies.
No, it's providing the
So
wrong
if I
evidence
say
for the claim
I can
being
prove the moon's made of cheese, and then I go and show you how Wensleydale is made, and say I have provided you evidence of how Wensleydale's made, therefore your dismissal of my claim that the moon's made of cheese isn't Hitchens' razor because I did provide some evidence, just wasn't in any way related to the thing I had to evidence. Yeah, Hitchens' razor applies.
Now is which fallacy are we going to apply, not whether or not the evidence exists, which is my point.
The evidence doesn't exist. My point was made and dismissed in regards to your claim of there being evidence for him being controlled opposition, which there is none. Therefore, the claim was dismissed due to lack of evidence.
You haven't presented any evidence for your claim, Tony. You presented evidence for another claim that you didn't make.
Yes, that's right.
No, the issue is whether the evidence of his poor debating skills reflects on whether or not he's controlled opposition.
Oh, we can discuss. We can discuss our opinions on that. But our opinions on it wouldn't make it evidence, though. I mean, we can suggest it might infer that, but it's not evidence. Inference isn't evidence. Inference isn't proof.
So that's a tacit acceptance that you wrongly applied Hitchens' razor, then?
No, because I don't accept there's any inference at all. I didn't at any stage.
I think everybody in the panel will disagree with that.
Do you think there's inference of being controlled opposition and getting a check from the government for the sake of argument by being a crap debater? So when I was a crap debater, so by that standard, you could go back to Flat Earth Debate 96, show how crap I was and infer on controlled op by that standard.
In isolation, no. But when there's accumulation of evidence that already exists and you can look at it objectively and you say, Jeron does know better than that, yet for some reason he come out with some nonsense in debate. It does raise the motive question, Nathan. And if you disagree with that, you're entitled to that opinion. But I think every panel member on this panel will disagree with you.
Would you agree, Anthony? Hello, Arwin. Hold on. Hello. We're trying to respond to him. Hello. Would you agree that having a question raised about it isn't evidence, Anthony? It's a question being raised after you've pointed something out. You pointed out he's a crap debater, and you're asking me to draw an inference by saying that raises the question of whether or not he might be controlled up. Well, it might raise that question, but it isn't evidence.
It seems to me that what you're doing is reversing the burden of proof with regards to the guilty mind. Because how do you prove one man's motivations and intentions?
A paycheck. You could show me a paycheck. When you claim he's a controlled opposition...
That wouldn't prove...
You could show me a paycheck.
A paycheck doesn't necessarily have to come from the government for it to be a dishonest motive. It
could be a paycheck from anything that infers any insincerity in regards to his position as from the grassroots member of the Flat Earth community. A paycheck would absolutely evidence that isn't the case. That would be evidence. I haven't had that from you, though.
I think that when Jeronism receives money from anywhere to do with Bob Nodell or his friends, that is the evidence of dodginess, because I consider Bob Nodell to be anti-Flat Earth.
Okay, well, find the evidence then.
If I'm crap at debating and I receive an amount of payment via a super chat, that standard could apply to me also.
Not via a super chat, no.
Yeah, it could. You've just said by any means.
Not via super chat.
You said by any means.
That's disconnected, isn't it? But what if we saw your bank statement, Nathan, and in your bank statement it came from Arwin every show, you got 100 quid?
What about it?
Look, can we move on? I mean,
there is evidence there that you receive money from Arwin for 100 quid for every show. And if it just so happened that you were pretty shit regularly and you're receiving money from Arwin regularly, then that would infer that there is dodginess, right? But we don't have your bank statement to confirm or deny it.
No.
Is there
hold on.
Hold on.
Hello.
100 quid?
Oh, God. 5-way conversation. No, I on a regular basis, it might not be monthly, and it's a pittance of an amount. But if you checked Arwin's statements, I regularly give him money. So because Arwin's crap, you're going to blame me giving him money for that?
No, but no one's suggesting that Arwin might be crap linked to being paid for by somebody like you.
Do you like how we've both now bought into this notion that Arwin's crap?
Yeah. He didn't explode at that point.
No, but the point still stands, though, Nathan. The point still stands. What standard of evidence do we need to satisfy? And if you're going to say a bank statement with the name of the donor and his connection, then that's unrealistic because you're never going to get anyone's guilty mind ever. All you got to look at is all the evidence and pin it together and come to a reasonable conclusion and then say, based on the evidence that I see, there is an issue here.
I think, Tony, that you've got this point, and I'd like to say Eddie the Eagle Edwards. He was consistently crap, way crapper than anyone. Yeah, he got lots and lots of money. That's not sufficient performance and income to infer crookedness. It doesn't necessarily, unless you can add some more meat on the bone. There has to be something that contextualizes any payment as a motivation.
Let me give Anthony a real world example. Let me give Anthony a real world example. So if I make the statement that I am suppressed in the YouTube searches, yeah, and I moan that MC2 comes up higher than me, and I just say it's because YouTube suppress flat earthers, and you go, well, what's your evidence? And I go, well, look at the searches. Look how far I am down them. Look at this, look at that, look at the other. And you look at it and go, okay, yeah, I can see that you're far down in the searches. But that could just mean that no one likes you. And I go, no, it's because I'm a flat earther. Yeah, and you
but
go,
it could
no,
also mean that they are suppressing you, right?
But you could show all the correlations and say, well, it does raise the question of why everybody else who's also flat earth, when you show me 50 more examples of people who are flat earthers really low down the list.
Well, then poses the question,
I'm getting somewhere, Anthony. I'm getting somewhere. Anthony. Right. At that stage of my description, you could hand wave it in the same way I have, because you can draw the correlation, but you can't use it as evidence. It doesn't prove it. However, if I then say, here's a clip of YouTube in front of Congress being told that they're going to damn well do something about this flat earth, and their response is, we're going to put favourable content above it. And they go, okay.
That's not what the response was, though, was it? The response was they were going to put a disclaimer, a tramp stamp underneath saying that this is an archaic thingy. That was the response.
No, they've also put out press releases that I can easily evidence that show that they're going to be promoting quote-unquote favourable or favoured content. They've said that specifically in relation to flat earth. My point, I don't want to debate about this. I just want you to accept that has happened and would constitute... I tell you what, Rumpus my end of my point. Why not Rumpus the end of my point? Thank you so much. Thank you. The end of my point would like to be made. And it thanks you for shutting up. Yeah. So I have got something to actually qualify me saying YouTube suppresses me. Here's them telling an audience about what they'll do about flat earth. Yeah? There you go. There's a direct example with evidence. But if I just say I'm low down the lists, it's not.
Right. So let me respond. When you've cited the evidence on which you rely, it doesn't prove the point that you're claiming it does, because the evidence that you cite said that they would put a tramp stamp underneath the video saying that it had been debunked or whatever it was they said. But it didn't provide evidence that they were suppressing it intentionally because of whatever you said. So it's not provided the evidence that you claim, yet you use that standard, which you failed by yourself, against me to show the same thing against Jaron.
Well, I can provide the evidence because along with YouTube saying, along with the Congress saying that they had to do something about fake news. So it's not just flat earth, but it's anything that's going to go against any mainstream narrative. They said that they were going to suppress it. And before that, during that, and after that, you have all of these independent journalist channels doing videos about how, oh, look at my analytics. Look at how I'm steadily falling as CNN and all of these other YouTube channels are steadily rising. even though there's no change in their engagement and there's no change in ours.
Okay, well, I appreciate you. I appreciate you doing that, Eli. And yes, you've given the example to contextualize it better than I did, and I thank you. That isn't my point, though. I don't want to debate about whether or not YouTube has done that. I'm saying that as a standard, me playing a clip of them specifically discussing censorship and specifically talking about flat Earth and what they're going to do about it would constitute evidence when I make the statement that I'm being suppressed. Oh, well, what makes you suspect that would be lists of stuff and doing crap at debates by comparison in your example. Whereas a video clip of somebody in a government position having a conversation with Jaren on a different topic, you know, let's say it's abortion, and suddenly Jaren's conversing with government as an advisor, although it's a different subject, I'd be like, yeah, that proves that he's coercing with these agencies. And obviously, therefore, you don't need to show a paycheck. There he is doing it. That would be evidence.
Good. So I don't need to show a paycheck, but all I do need to show is Jaren saying somewhere in his abundance of shows that Nathan Oakley's a lying shill or whatever, and Bob saying, yeah, he definitely is, and don't go over there. Let's shut down the fight. Let's shut down the flat Earth debate or whatever. That kind of conversation, by application of what you gave as evidence, would be sufficient to show that there is a collusion against Nathan.
Yeah, that would show there's a collusion against me. It doesn't prove they're paid operatives or controlled opposition. It's just a different thing you're proving again.
May I, Anthony?
We've negated the paycheck bit. We've negated the paycheck. All we need to show is that there is a controlled opposition. And if we show a conversation with Bob, say, and Whitsit, where Nathan is demonized and the protagonists of their movement, like Jaren, is exalted into some kind of position of exaltation, that would be sufficiently equivalent to the evidence that you cited, which you accept for yourself. And there's abundance of evidence of them doing exactly that.
No, that is not
so how
the
is
same.
that any different?
How is that different? Because obviously Arwin's going to answer for me.
How is it any different to the YouTube video?
Hello, I was trying to answer you. It's different because in the standard I laid down, there's a very specific example that parallels with my claim that I'm being suppressed. Here's them saying they will suppress information that doesn't fall in line with their rhetoric. I can't give you any better evidence as I haven't finished. As a standard, you're saying if I show a discussion between Congress, not YouTube and Congress, just Congress, asking the question about how they're going to suppress somebody, well, that shows that Congress doesn't like flat Earth. It doesn't demonstrate that YouTube wants to suppress me because there isn't a clear and concise description of the suppression that's going to take place as there was in my example. You're talking about, by equivalent, Congress discussing amongst themselves the problem of flat Earth. Well, Bob and Jaren discussing the problem of Nathan Oakley isn't them being controlled opposition. It doesn't demonstrate it at all.
So what standard would you accept where Bob and Jaren or whatever? What is the standard for Nathan Oakley to satisfy himself, despite all of the other people that disagree?
That's not a burden of proof reversal. You give me the evidence and I'll assess it. But I've already given you one. I'll give it you again. I'll give it you again.
I have given you the evidence.
I'll give it you again. You asked, I'll give it you if I can get through. Yeah, I said, if you showed him having a discussion where he's clearly an advisor to an agency that's by equivalent something that you could consider controlled opposition. So if for the sake of argument, it was, I don't know what government agency it would be that would be discussing with Jaren something like I gave an example with an abortion about, but you could say, here he is as a government advisor, obviously on the payroll. It's not about flat Earth, but here he is doing it as a government advisor. I'd go, yeah, that isn't hard cold proof that he's a flat Earth shill, but it's proof that he's a shill. So therefore, I can then infer that as a standard of evidence that I can look upon as inferring that he's, in line with your claim, controlled opposition. But until I get something that can infer it, just being crap at debate or attacking me doesn't demonstrate that or evidence that at all.
I don't agree with that.
That's Anthony, you're going down the wrong road with this because it was, right? Don't attribute to malice what ignorance can explain. So this is only going to be proof to you, Nathan, because you'll know whether it's true or not. Do you know if Jaron has heard the argument of gas pressure without a container? Has he heard the arguments prior and leading up to the Black Swan? Do you know if he knows that?
I don't know.
It's only going to be
that.
proof to you.
I haven't got evidence to categorically state he knows that. I don't know what he knows.
Well, that's really where the line is drawn, is the information he has. So if anyone out there has proof that he has information about this subject, right, these topics, and he doesn't use them in debate, then Anthony will have a case.
Right, and I can prove that right now. I have seen on his own show.
Hold on, Eli.
I have seen on his own show when he cites the definition for pseudoscience. He brings it up on screen. He reads it verbatim, and he said scientific method, and he reads it right. He knows it on his own show, but when he goes into debate, he gets lost in the weeds. Now, if anybody denies that, I'll go and dig it out if I have to. I'm going to take it on face value that everyone accepts that. We've seen him do it. But if someone says that is just evidence of poor debate, right, and then says you need to see a paycheck from somewhere in the government, I would then say, no, the fact that he gets paid money or kind from people like Bob Nodell. So he gets supported by Bob Nodell, for example, in kind, maybe not cash, but he'll send him equipment. He'll support him. He'll cover for him when he fucks up. All that kind of stuff is payment in kind. And do I then need to show that Bob Nodell is on the payroll, or is it sufficient that evidence does exist because Bob does do that kind of stuff and Bob himself is dodgy as fuck? Is that satisfying the burden? Because if it's not, then,
let me answer.
Then you've got a too high standard of burden. If it does, then he is fucking paid chill.
Sorry, just because Bob supports him, you're asking now if you shift the burden over to Bob's paying him or supporting him in kind or providing equipment, do you have to demonstrate that Bob is somehow on the payroll also, or the man with the pay strings? Yeah, you do. Definitely.
I don't think so.
Or we can just assume.
Would,
right. Oh, my bad. We just hold on. My bad. I just assume Bob is a government paid chill to make this all make sense. I just assume that with no evidence.
I believe he is. I do assume that.
Yeah, you believe it, but you didn't actually provide the evidence.
No, but again,
a lot of suspicion and a lot of terrible behavior, but that's not evidence.
So let's take Bob and Jaron for a minute, and let's apply it against Ranty. I don't think there's any dispute that Ranty's gone for the money, and now he's dropped that because he realizes that he's not that good at making money, right? That is the position.
He publicly admitted that.
Yeah. So why is it any different for Bob and Jaron? Because
they're not publicly admitting their control opposition and they're being paid to oppose us.
But do they need to? Or is
they would need to, yeah.
Yes.
Or you would need to find evidence of them saying it in another way.
Nah, I don't agree. The evidence is sufficient in itself.
What evidence? You haven't provided any.
Can I go after Eli?
Hello? Yeah.
Go on, Eli.
Even with Ranty as well, Ranty has consistently shown his lack of understanding for fundamental arguments, which is why QE, I guess, criticized him in the ways that he did. I saw that early on. The same thing with Jaronism. Jaron. My favorite video from Jaron also let me know that he didn't have a grasp on what the scientific method actually was. My favorite video that Arwen introduced to the show, like I don't know how many years ago. Like that's consistent. That's not telling me that he has an intended use for something he understands, but put out as a misunderstanding or some nefarious straw man attempt or whatever. Like I don't know that he understands these things. That's the problem.
Yeah,
one video evidence. Can you say something? No.
Eli,
hold on, Anthony. Hold on, Anthony.
He's halfway his point.
Yeah, he's number one. He's still in the middle of his point, and Brian wants to go after him. So do you want to just let Eli finish, and then Brian, then Anthony?
Are you finished? And also, it's not that I didn't. It's not just don't focus on me just saying one video, because I didn't say that. I said he's been consistent like that, and that was from starting with the very first video I've seen of him. He's consistently misunderstood. That doesn't inform me to use as evidence that he knows and is doing the opposite of what he knows to intentionally deceive.
Okay. So let me come back to that. Remember that line. Brian, go on.
Brian, go ahead.
Yeah. Don't worry, Anthony. This won't be anything too bad. We're coming at this in the wrong way. First of all, we have to establish, right, not if they're controlled opposition. First of all, we establish, are they our opposition? Yes, we've established they are most definitely our opposition. They have opposed what we're trying to do here. They're not the only ones, but they have opposed what we're trying to do here. They have been fraudulent. Jerem was openly fraudulent with that citation, and they have gone against us publicly, right? And they have proven to be opposing us, right? Now, outside of opposing us, is there any other, let's just say, evidence that they have done things that are in opposition to what the wider community are trying to do?
Yes, there is.
There is. So our problem is we are trying to say they're controlled opposition, but that's an inference we can make, but how do we support that as being controlled opposition?
Perfect.
We can say they're in opposition to the wider community, and they're directly in opposition to us. Controlled opposition is
okay.
We can make the
hold on.
but we don't have. Yeah.
Well, we got your point, Brian. Is there anything more? If not, it's Anthony, then Arwin.
Well, look, I leave you go ahead. I was going to say sort of things. It don't matter. Just go ahead. I don't want to take up.
Go ahead, Anthony. But I got your point.
So back to Eli's point. When you said that one particular video that's your favorite video of all time from Jaren, if he consistently gets that 1 point wrong, we can give him a pass. We can say, okay, he fucks that 1 point up. But I think everybody accepts, and I don't think it's really disputable, although Nathan's got to dispute this because this is his position. There is enough evidence that shows that Jaren regularly gets a lot of things so badly wrong that it goes beyond just being a poor debater, in my opinion. Now, Nathan then dismisses my opinion and says, well, it's just your opinion. We've all got them. And that's true. But the reality is there's too many mistakes or too many bad arguments that he makes that goes beyond him just being poor in debate, in my opinion. That is the evidence on which I rely.
Let me respond to this. My turn.
Arwin, then Eli.
No, because
Arwin, then Eli. Hold on, Eli. Go ahead, Arwin.
Yeah. No, I agree. But the thing is, it's not evidence of a control, right?
Right.
They're opposing us and they're avoiding arguments, right? Jaren, what's so devastating about his errors every time is that he avoids perfectly solid, useful arguments because, well, I'm assuming they've come from us and we've been refining them and they've turned out to be so
don't
useful.
throw in that claim. We don't
that.
know that. You don't know that. You don't know who's avoiding them because of us. Don't throw in that.
But he does it. And when you do it consistently, for no reason,
my God! Now we've got two spurious claims to fight about. No, I don't. Please, Arwin, please concede it. You don't have any evidence of that.
But he doesn't need evidence of it. The fact is, he does it.
No, it's not evidence of controlled opposition.
Eli,
Hold on, not done yet.
Arwin,
it's not evidence of controlled opposition. It's evidence of opposition, willing, knowing opposition, and I think he avoids our arguments on purpose.
Yeah,
that would be
so they would benefit him.
It's just your opinion, like it's Anthony's opinion that he's under some sort of control. Go ahead, Eli.
Not really. More than opinion.
When you responded to a slightly skewed representation of what I said, no, Anthony, you didn't, get exactly what I said. You said, so he consistently got something wrong in a particular video. That's not what I said. Okay, but that was the premise you led with that I had to wait 3 minutes for.
I elaborated on that. I didn't stop at that point.
No, that was the premise, which means everything after that was subsequent. Like, what the hell is wrong with y'all?
Yeah, but you're missing the elaboration bit. I said we can give him a pass on that one instance, but if he does it regularly,
I said I think you give him a pass. I didn't. No, that's all of that is wrong. That wasn't the point of what I was saying.
No, but in addressing your point, I said that we can give him a pass on one instance, right? If you're going to pick on any one instance, we can all get a pass because we can all fuck things up.
I'm not picking on one instance. That's the point. That your premise is wrong in addressing me.
How? How is my premise wrong in addressing you?
Because I'm not talking about one video in which he consistently got something wrong. That wasn't my point.
So what was your point then if it wasn't about your favorite ever video?
Since the favorite ever video, he has a misunderstanding of the fundamentals. Every time I've heard him talk about science, scientific methods, science this, science that, he's been wrong.
He's contradicted him. Might be saying the same thing.
You are, Eli. He's agreeing with you.
However,
it's just Eli. He's agreeing with you. You are actually in agreement. He's had a consistent inconsistency with his understanding, is what you're saying.
Okay. Yeah.
Anthony agrees,
so
but Anthony's saying that consistent inconsistency. Number one infers that he's doing it deliberately and therefore under control, not as opposed to just being our opposition. And our opposition doesn't mean controlled opposition unless you can prove control.
Bob is the proof of control.
I disagree, because I mean, when people don't understand how they come to conclusions fallaciously, it manifests in many different scenarios. Like with my mom, what is my mom controlled opposition now?
I'm going to go with yes.
I'm just going to say your mom might be ignorant.
Right, but just based on the evidence.
I just thought of something really funny.
Okay.
Your mama.
Well, can I get in on this for a second? Because my point about it can't be ignorance. It would have to be either completely retarded or deliberate.
I agree with that.
Right.
That's correct.
Like, no, so it's proven he's not retarded. He's proven that. No,
I agree with that. Sorry. I agree with that too.
I'm actually in total agreement with Anthony. It's just as far as actual evidence that they're controlled, as far as what evidence will be accepted in court. I don't know if we have that, but I'm in 100% agreement with Anthony.
You definitely don't have that.
Evidence for me would be a check between somebody at JPL and
okay, let's just get in order. Hold on, everyone, hold on. Hello. John, then Arwin, then Brian. Hold on, Brian.
John, QE, then Arwin.
That's what I meant. You, QE. Sorry, there's two Johns. QE. Hello. QE, then Arwin, then Brian.
Thank you. So the charge is controlled opposition. What are the characteristics of controlled opposition?
That's what we're trying to argue over.
It's the first time it's been asked.
First time it's come up.
Opposition, for a start. Continual opposition.
You shouldn't be asking what are the characteristics of controlled opposition after you charge somebody with controlled opposition. That implies that you already know what controlled opposition is. So what is the characteristics of controlled opposition?
Well, it's someone opposing you.
Not you.
Purpose. Oh.
Anthony. He's asking Anthony.
You.
I was me. I was speaking when QE came in, so I thought he was speaking to me there. Because you came in and said, well, it was me speaking.
Okay, he's murdered my order, but that doesn't matter because he's directly asking Sleeping Warrior. But Arwin will go next, regardless. Then you, Brian.
I didn't realise you were asking me. There was no name.
Okay, let's start again.
I have my suspicions.
Anthony, can you define what characterizes being controlled opposition, please?
Yeah, a protest movement led by government agents.
What is a government agent?
Somebody that's paid to... Is that definition wrong?
We don't need that definition. We don't need to define what a bloody government agent is. Okay, we got that bit. We're all clear about what it's defined as by Anthony now. So we're all 100% clear what needs to be proven. You need to prove a connection to a government agency then.
Right.
Hold on.
So the connection...
Can I have my turn?
Not yet.
You have the connection. Shut the fuck up.
So there is a government agency that we can connect these people to.
What's that?
There's a government agency that we can connect these people to. That doesn't make any sense. You're charging one person with controlled opposition. I didn't hear any characteristics. I know government agents. They're not
we haven't got
controlled.
there yet, though.
So what
to be
are
fair,
the
John,
characteristics of controlled opposition and that alone?
it's all the D's. So do you know? Have you ever heard of JTRIG?
What are you asking me questions for?
Just give him the description. Damn, Anthony.
It's all of the D's as defined by the JTRIG movement, a government-controlled disinformation operative body. Are you familiar with that? Yes or no? If you're not, I'll tell you. If you are, I can move past it.
I want the characteristics of controlled opposition.
JTRIG.
He's right. Okay.
Right,
Okay. Everyone stop.
Darwin.
Everyone stop. 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 Anthony's trying to define it, but he's asking you, do you know what a JTRIG is? If you say no, he'll define what a JTRIG is, and then use that as his.
Nope.
He doesn't, Anthony. Go ahead. Tell him what a JTRIG is, and then we can move on.
JTRIG stands for the Joint Threat Research Intelligence Group. You can look it up anywhere. It's documented everywhere. And they have a modus operandi, which is I refer to colloquially as all the D's, which is deceive, discombobulate, and there's a few others. From the top of my head, I can't remember, but I'll look them up if I have to.
Epic, Anthony.
Disrupt.
Disrupt, deceive, deny, distract, discombobulate. There's a few more. I can't remember them off the top of my head. However, JTRIG seems to exist. And if somebody displays these Ds consistently over a long period of time, that is the evidence that they are linked to a government-controlled PSYOP. That is the evidence they're doing it. And they do that.
But that's correlatory evidence. That's not a hard evidence link, unfortunately, right? What would require that is an actual, like a payment being made to one of these people, I suspect maybe Bob or something, from like a highly suspect person, like, for example, somebody over at JPL. Now, that would be a real marker because JPL is about mind control and like confusing people. That's basically one of their objectives.
Hold on. I just want John to round out his point. Then Brian, then refractor curvature. Go ahead.
Still didn't get Holy.
Okay, and add Eli to the queue.
Shut the fuck up!
I've got to get control. I've got to add people to the queue. Go ahead, QE.
I still haven't gotten characteristics of controlled opposition. I got JTRIG. Okay.
No, I explained what JTRIG was, though. I went beyond just saying JTRIG. I said that they've got the characteristics of deceive, deny, disrupt, discombobulate, and a few others. And that is the evidence of them doing that is present. We do have that. If anyone disputes it, I will go and find it. But we can show them doing that. That is the evidence of them linking them to a government.
JTRIG is controlled opposition, and their characteristics are deceive. What else?
Deceive, deny, discombobulate, disrupt. There's two more. I can't remember.
Delay, disassemble.
Yeah.
Distract.
So distract, yes. Distract.
Okay. Those are characteristics of JTRIG.
Yeah.
And
which is a government-controlled body designed
Holy fuck, I can't even get a sentence out. Shut the fuck up. God. You're fucking screwed.
How?
I'm done. Fuck you.
So no response then, John?
No, you rumpused him. Like you were doing to me.
I stopped and allowed him to continue, and he said he's done.
It's 50-50.
Discredit, that was another one. Discredit.
Nobody cares. Move on.
Yeah, but this is the evidence on which we can rely on to show that they are controlled opposition, and therefore satisfy the evidential burden put to us by Nathan that there's no connection to a government control. There is, because they do all the things that government control do. Discredit, deny,
correlatory evidence. That's not causing. There's no evidence. There's no trail just because they know somebody.
Hello, everyone else. Hello. Can you hear Arwin? I want him to actually say that sentence without Anthony immediately talking through it because it contradicts him.
Go on, then say it.
Right. So it's correlatory. Just because somebody or a group even mimics something doesn't mean that they are causally linked, that they're being paid, that they have agency directly tied to that organization. It's called mimic. It's correlatory. That's it.
Correlation doesn't prove causation. But that doesn't negate correlation to be evidence of the behaviors that we're claiming, that I claim, proves that they are controlled opposition.
No,
because it does. When
it's
they
not going to hold up in court, Tony.
They are the... So according to you, according to you, but the reality is they are trying to discredit Nathan. They are deliberately discombobulating certain topics to do with gravity. They are deliberately deceiving people when they claim that there is a little downward directional charge when it's not proportionate to mass, and they ignore the rebuttal. All of these things are present. So when you claim that they are correlative only, that doesn't mean that they're not evidence. It does mean that they're evidence.
All you did was break down the correlation. Like all you did was just get more detailed about the correlation while asserting that that's evidence. No, it's not. No, it's not. And I'll tell you why. Matter of fact, it's not that I will tell you why. I'll give you what you should be doing. Okay? So people have said, oh, you know, Twitter has agents working, you know, for them, agents in the government, blah, 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 blah. Okay? And then someone goes, well, what evidence do you have? Oh, look at all of this opposition that this person is giving off. Yeah, okay, that's not evidence. You know what became evidence though? When they found out he worked for Biden. Oh, that would be the fucking evidence people are asking for, aside from the correlation.
Yeah, but
something you're not getting.
The problem with that standard of evidence that's being put is that what you're saying is, for me to be able to prove that they are disinfo agents and controlled opposition, I've got to somehow get their bank account details to prove that they get paid by a government when the behavior is consistent with that behavior anyway, and it is not relevant. It's not required. No, it's not required.
Like you don't know you act like you don't know the difference between believing and knowing. Dude, you just
I'm not. I'm saying that it isn't required that I need a bank statement to prove payment from a government agent. Because let's be honest, anybody that's state employed, anybody state employed of any form is an agent of the government, be it police, fire, nurse. They're all agents of the state.
And they got money trails to back that up.
Yeah, but look.
Eli, then
look,
Arwin. Everyone else, hold on. It's getting convoluted because you're all off mute. Arwin, Sleeping Warrior, and Eli. Yeah, I realise you're talking to each other, but you still have to pepper the mute button. Eli, then Arwin. Go ahead.
Oh, damn near forgot what I was going to say. Just because they're doing all the... Like, you're saying, oh, so I'm supposed to do this. Oh, so I'm supposed to do that. Whatever you have to do to be a knower of something empirically, that's what the fuck you have to do. Period. Like, it's sitting here gobsmacked, like, oh, dude, for real.
It's not an objective. It's not a subjective test, is it?
Dude, for real. Can you chill out? Before everybody looks at me like I'm doing something wrong. All I'm saying is, just admit that there's a difference between knowing and believing. Because of all of this correlatory information, you believe strongly that they're agents, but you don't fucking know, bro. Like, why can't you just admit that and let the conversation continue?
Because I don't accept that it's a subjective standard of evidence to prove that they get a paycheck. I believe it's an objective standard where you look at their MO and say, right, they behave like this. If they behave like a dog and they bark like a dog, they're probably a dog. That's the objective standard of working out if it's a dog. Now, subjective.
Well, then you got a modus operandi and not an actual piece of proof.
Yeah, that's how innocent men get locked up.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, if the burden against me is so high that I need to break the law to obtain their personal bank details, that's unobtainable.
You can show a correlation with somebody's movements throughout a day and show that that person was at the same scene of the crime as every murder that had taken place and it not be that person. You can show that...
How? Because that evidence would be used as strong evidence to show that you're in the right place at the right time and there's a dead body. How would you negate that as being evidence that they didn't do it?
I'm not saying it isn't evidence that they wouldn't do it, that they aren't the person. I'm saying that it doesn't demonstrably prove it beyond all doubt. In other words, you can have two people that are at the same place at the same time. I used a string of places, which is far less likely, but I'll just use one because somebody was at the scene of the crime. If the scene of the crime was a public place, there's going to be lots of people that coincidentally were at the scene of the crime. But when the guy's on the dock and they're like, yeah, but you were at the scene of the crime and you meet the description of another victim. There you go, to throw something out. So there's two pieces of evidence. It doesn't necessarily mean he is the perpetrator.
That is exactly the same point as when I say you can pick on any one error that Jeremy makes and you can say, we'll give you a pass on that one error. But when there's several errors and he makes them repeatedly, that's the same as being in the same vicinity of the murder on each occasion. And you saying, but it's not proof that he didn't do it. No, but he was there on all of the murders, though, wasn't he? In the same way that Jeremy is continuously making the same errors over and over and over again. So at some point, you've got to say, it's a little bit too coincidental. But if the standard is, according to Nathan Oakley, I need a bank statement to prove that the money that he receives comes from the government, I would say that's too narrow and it's unrealistic. Because
I didn't say that. Right, okay. Let me just clear that. By
demonstrating how continuously deceptive, how continuously he discredits.
Okay, we got all that. We got it all. But you've ignored that. No, even though it's not my burden, I gave you a different standard, which you now completely ignore. So, no, I said...
No, I didn't completely ignore it. I applied it. Let's be clear. I didn't ignore it. I said it is the same as Jeremy making countless errors. That's what I did.
It isn't, though, because when somebody gets murdered, there's a victim.
And Arwin. No, that wasn't my point. I said, no, you could show him literally in cahoots with a government agency on a different topic on a video. And you could say, look, here he is, clearly conversing as a what did I say, a consultant in a different subject area. So he's obviously on the payroll for that because it's quite explicit. Yeah. Therefore, I can draw the parallel. Now that would be a strong inference.
Yeah.
But that's not required. In your version, your standard of evidence, that's sufficient. But in my standard of evidence...
No. Don't misrepresent what I said. I didn't say that would be sufficient. I said that could be offered as something to offer inference. That wouldn't satisfy the standard by any means. But you could offer it when you said, I used that as a comparison. When you're like, no, showing his shit at debate can be used as evidence. I'm like, no, it can't. But as something that could be used to meet that standard that you're trying to imply, I could say no. To be of inference standard, you can say, here's him as a consultant dealing with a different topic as an obvious paid government agent. There he is consulting for them. Therefore, definitely on the payroll for that example. It's not the same as our subject, and I intentionally removed it by saying it was about abortion to make it not about our subject, so that it could be of the inference standard that you were saying in regards to how crap it is at debate. That would be an inference from being a government paid agent. Now, that isn't going to satisfy the standard, but I could go, oh, yeah, I could see how you draw inference from that. But at one stage he was paid by the government. I could still raise just as many objections and go, even though at one stage he was a paid government agent, he may not be one now. What's the standard of proof for him being one now and actually in this subject being paid to be a shill for this subject and do a bad job to make us look bad? Where's your standard for that? Because I can infer it from this obvious piece of footage where he's talking about abortion as a government paid consultant, but that doesn't prove he's a paid flat earth shill, does it?
So what, following from what you've just said, and I didn't misrepresent what you said, Nathan, by the way, I'll correct that first. What standard of evidence would you accept? Do you want a signed declaration that he's a paid shill?
Not my burden.
Paper trail.
It's not my burden. You prove it to me. You're going to ask the jury what they would accept. What would you accept, jury? Let me plead to you, jury. What would you accept, jury? I don't care.
Yeah.
Well, hold on a second.
There's as many arguments as you want to argue against the evidence, but the reality is the evidence does exist whether you accept it or not, and it's not subject.
Okay, Arwin, John's been... Hold on. John's been waiting the longest because I did introduce him to the queue. Then Arwin, then I'm sure Eli's got something to add. Go ahead, John.
I said I was going to
answer John. John and then Brian.
Right. Where you two are in a personal discussion or debate, however you want to define this, the standard of evidence that he wants you to accept, right? He's asking you for that standard of what you will accept, Nathan. Now, I don't know if he's met the standard that I would appreciate yet. But like, we're not working with empirical things. I don't think it would be fair to show, you know, like a government paycheck. Like I don't even think they would give out a government paycheck to a shield. So I think figuring out what our standard of evidence is first is where we need to be at to get clarification.
Okay, fine. You're saying that's not a reasonable standard because it would be empirical. And I can give an example. It might be from the shill media, but in the apparently true story of Diana, the BBC, forged payment slips from a claim to be offshore bank account for somebody that they were implying was spying on her. And the way that they proved it to her was by showing various different people within her local, her circle, getting payments from this dodgy source. And they took out an envelope with what they'd forged and put it in front of her. Look, there's a payment going into his bank. So he's obviously being paid off. There's the payment. So she's like, fine, I'll be a whistleblower about the royal family because they're obviously all spying on me. There's the payments to prove it. So based on that, she did the interview. So what was the standard in this instance that Diana sold out the royal family for? Proof that was forged that they were on a payroll. Well, she was wrong to accept it because even then that standard wasn't high enough because it was forged. But the standard you're saying, well, what do you want, a pay slip? Like showing that they've been paid. Well, even then that wouldn't be high enough based on that story that I've been told that may not be true about Diana and her going to the, whatever it was, newspaper to give the story to, Panorama, the BBC. She gave the story to them on the basis that she'd been proven that there was payments being made with pay slips.
Okay. That's fine. Anthony, you can't convince him then. I'm sorry. You're just not going to be able to convince Nathan of what you believe.
Well,
see,
I might not be able to convince Nathan, and I don't like the phrase of what I believe. I prefer the phrase of what is already available for all. I don't think anybody denies the evidence exists.
I do. What do you mean nobody denies it? I have categorically and outright denied that you have provided any evidence and then plied Hitchens' razor on the basis that what you provided was not evidence, therefore I could dismiss everything you said because there wasn't any evidence. There isn't any evidence. This isn't...
We've been through this.
One more disclaimer, then I'll shut up, I promise. One more disclaimer, then I promise I'll shut up. Number one, I know Anthony doesn't believe this because Anthony knows me well enough to know that I am a hyper-skeptic. And he knows that. So the fact that he's even presenting this to me tells me he doesn't even believe this, or he wouldn't be presenting it to me as a hyper-skeptic that he knows I am. He wants me to challenge this shit. And it is shit because there's no evidence for it.
So we have already been through the bit of evidence. And the evidence, we've already accepted that most people accept that there is evidence of poor debate. The issue is whether the poor debate equals JTRIGS, whether poor debate equals controlled opposition or not. Then John said, what is the definition for controlled opposition? And it is a government-led military operation, if you will, to deliberately cause problems. That is what controlled opposition is.
Not what he asked.
So
he asked you what characteristics of a controlled. He asked you what the characteristics of controlled opposition were. And then when you started defining what JTRIGS were, he tried to say, no, I asked you what the characteristics of controlled opposition were. And then you rumpused him 2 or 3 times and then he gave up.
So now on screen,
I like the non-denial of your previous statement, Nathan. That summed it up beautifully for me where we're at.
So present my screen, Nathan, for all to see.
I didn't really follow what you meant, Adam, but I hope that's a compliment and I'll take it as such. Because I'm like that.
Yeah,
I don't know what he referenced either because there was no denial. There was. I don't want to pursue it.
He summarised the situation of what was going on, what the crux of the debate was, who was what, where people actually were, because you two are good friends, and put it to you that was the case, of which he just went straight into this. in terms of the strength of the argument, and you're asking for it to be tested, which I agree, because that's what we're doing.
Okay.
Have I noticed the lack of denial? Probably lack of recognition then, sorry.
In looking for the flaws in your argument,
I don't even know who
you're
it's playing against, but I want to move on.
I think what Adam's trying to say is, by presenting this, right, you're trying to find the strength in this, aren't you?
No, I'm just trying to show that there is ample evidence that he is a controlled opposition agent.
What, the strength in your claim? Yeah, that's the same thing, Anthony. You're just being argumentative now.
Before you said he's bad at debating, is there anything else?
Eli, I was ahead of you in the queue.
Hold on, we got Eli and no tanks. Just because he hasn't had a word in. Hold on. We will get to Eli, then Brian, right? But no tanks because he hasn't said a word up until now. Feel free to just add your comment, and then we'll get to you, Eli.
I was just curious if Sleeping Warrior had any other evidence besides I think he's a bad debater. Is there anything else?
Sure. As I've said, there are ample evidences which I don't think anyone really denies. But if you deny them, then I would say that might be your own ignorance. And I don't mean that in a rude way. What I mean is there are lots of examples of Jeremy
until you name them, because I asked you to name them.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that at this point.
Okay, right, stop. Okay, Eli, go ahead. No, he won't. He won't. He hasn't got any.
Brian first.
Okay, fine.
Oh, thanks, Eli. I appreciate that, because I know Eli always wants to get something, get his word in. Couple of things. I have to start with this. On the top of what you're presenting for us, Anthony, here, it says top secret. So I don't know why it says top secret, but when you see the word top secret, you know it's not top secret. Just going to throw that out there. But what I was going to say about it is, yeah, my opinion aligns with Anthony, right? But my opinion is not proof that they're controlled opposition. What I would say is we're coming at this from the wrong direction. How do we define them would be a better way to come at this. How do we define them and all their behaviour over the past 7 to 8 years? How can we define them from that? Because then we can get to what we can sink our teeth into and can say, yes, this, you can say this about them.
What if they're uncontrolled opposition?
I think Brian's
what if they just conspire among themselves to do this and to compete like a flatter society 2.0? Why would they have to be directed top down?
No, we won't stop.
Or when you do damn well.
Brian's right. The sooner we can define them, the sooner we can stereotype them. Go ahead, Eli.
The only thing that we know to define them, why am I saying them? Bob and Jaron is all I'm willing to say, so suck it. They're poor debaters. Why? Because they come to conclusions fallaciously. That's all we have. That's all we can say, which is why the guy just asked, is there any evidence other than them being poor debaters? Because if you're just going to say, look at this debate over here, 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 and here, all of these are bad debates. Okay, do you have anything else? Like that literally, that's what we've been talking about.
Yeah, but that's not why. No, that's not why. That's how they are poor debaters, not why. Very important point right there, brother.
That is the point. Yeah, that's the point. We don't know why. We don't know for a fact why they're poor debaters.
That's exactly. No, you said why. I said how.
No,
why.
No, that was the point. That was the point I was trying to make, because Anthony's trying to use that as a why.
Well, you said why.
Because
examining Anthony.
Anthony's trying to do.
Yeah, he's referencing Anthony. Okay, Arwin. Arwin. Then Sleeping Warrior's got something to present. Go ahead, Arwin. No, it's only when other people are talking. Go ahead, Sleeping Warrior.
Sorry, I was on mute. What was the question?
You've got something presented that you wanted to show us.
Yeah. So I've got, for the last 2 minutes, I've not heard anything that was said because I was moving stuff in, but this is a document, right? This is one of many documents that you can research yourself and see, is this authentic or not? This is not one isolated instance written by the rumpus. This is one of several. In this document, it identifies the key attributes of somebody that is a controlled opposition. And one of so scroll down to page 8. And on page 8, it says, examples and effects of online human operations. Operation targets JTRIG operations may cover all of the globe. Operation aim. Staff noted that the overall goals of an operation and the general content of communication message may be dictated by government policy. Generally, the language of JTRIG's operation is characterized by such terms as discredit, promote distrust, dissuade, deceive, disrupt, delay, deny, degrade, and denigrate, and deter. Now, they're the behavior traits of somebody that is JTRIG. I can pick on any one of them. I could do them all, but it would take a lot of time. But I could, fuck. Just, excuse, I'll have to come back a sec. Someone's banging on the door. One sec.
It's JTRIG.
Yeah, unfortunately, that also describes my mom sometimes. That's the thing about this. It's like, these aren't characteristics special to government agents, man.
Right.
Right. We've had this debate several times, and the closest resolution we can come to is it's a cult delusion.
Right.
That we can prove.
Well, so I can pick any one of these traits, and I can furnish all of these traits with ample evidence of Jaren and Bob and Whitsitt and a variety of other people in that circle. But in contrast, can they do the same with us? Can they do the same with other people? There's a difference between being wrong about a point and showing behavior like discrediting people. Jaren is trying to discredit Nathan all the time. Bob is trying to discredit Nathan all the time. We generally don't care what they do. We deal with their points, but they won't deal with our points, and all they'll do is call us. What's the word he uses to describe you?
Me? I don't know. I don't watch him.
He uses a word to describe you. What's the word he uses to call Nathan? What's he calling him at the minute?
Scammer.
Scammer. Yeah. So if I really had to, I could go away and collate all the evidence. But if the standard is, according to Nathan Oakley court, is that I need a bank statement, then this evidence would not be acceptable. So then the question would be, what would be the point? So if there is no point to me collecting evidence to support these claims, these behavior traits of JTRIG, then I'm not going to do it.
Well, then
but
don't.
if somebody said, actually, it would show that they're controlled opposition if you did go and get a lot of evidence, I would then go and do it. But I don't believe there's any point because Nathan will just go, I want a bank statement.
It's not. No.
The only reason this.
Hold on. Just respond to him. Then you can. Go ahead. But Anthony, I haven't got any issue with what you're doing, right? And even the compare and contrast to JTRIGS is perfectly reasonable, so long as you set your standard of what you're actually trying to prove lower. And it's been summarised by Arwin and by Eli, I believe, as well, which is to say that you're saying controlled opposition, and you're always going to be on a sticky wicket with the controlled bit. And when I really pegged you on it, you're like, well, it's controlled by Bob, paid by Bob, right? No, in terms of that context, you've got to prove he's a JTRIG if you're laying down that standard. But if you just say,
no, I don't.
Just hear me out. If your standard was opposition, just opposition, they're in opposition to what? Well, if you want to say to flat Earth, I would have to agree with you, because does it benefit it? No. Does it go against it if it's wrong? Yeah, it definitely does. It makes us look terrible, especially if it's incorrect. When it comes to science, especially, that makes us look awful. So does it go against flat Earth? Yeah, I would say so. So are they our opposition? You can encompass our as wide as you like without objection from me. Now, if you want to widen it just as far as flat Earth, no worries. Are they our opposition? Yeah, we'll all agree with you when you lay down that standard. So go forth with that standard, just don't put the controlled bit at the beginning, and I won't have any objection. I'll nod along indefinitely. But the moment you go, therefore paid operative, therefore JTRIG, therefore controlled opposition, I'll go, no, you haven't satisfied that standard, Anthony, you haven't.
So then the question that I keep asking is, why is it a bank statement that is required? Or tell me, what is the connection to the government bit that you need?
It's a standard you don't need. Well, that's the other thing I should add then. You don't need to satisfy that standard to make your point.
Nathan's got a point.
Because again, if they in opposition, well, all of that is evidence. We don't have to make any inferences. We don't have to, like, it's all we got to do is talk about Saturday afternoon. You know what I mean? Like, but when you say controlled op and you start talking about government this and government that, then you start asking, you know, to our rebuttals, well, what would you accept? I don't know. Evidence that they quite literally are cooperating with the government. I don't give a fuck what form that. I don't care exactly. It does. I don't care how. If there was a link, it would be evidence.
Okay, so we can address that directly by reading what it says. Let me put it back on screen. If Nathan wouldn't, if you present it. Oh, shit, not.
Just before, Nathan's kind of made a good point there in terms of you've been asking him what evidence he'd want. What he just said to you there is what charges he'd be happy with. So instead of government shithouse, he's quite happy with shithouse.
All right, but he wants the government connection, though.
No,
I don't. You do.
Connection. He doesn't need a government connection. This is what I'm saying. He's happy with shithouse, not government shithouse.
But he wants. Previously, he wanted the financial connection. He made the point about Princess Diana and Martin Bashir. He wanted to see statements that of connection, right?
But that was in connection to the charges of government shithouse, which is what you thrust upon him. He said to you, look, you want this, then the charges I'm happy to deal with. And I'm going to probably agree with the evidence you're presenting now, because it's a lesser charge. It doesn't require a secondary indictment of something completely different. I'm happy with the charges of shithousery, and I don't think you're going to get opposition there. But you will get, if you want to involve, without proof, a third party.
Let's pay attention to what this wording actually says. Generally, the language of JTRIGS operations is characterized by terms such as discredit, promote distrust, dissuade, deceive, disrupt, delay, deny, degrade, and deter. So generally, if the language of JTRIGS operation is characterized by those terms, and then we show evidence of those, of Jaren, for instance, displaying those attributes, that is evidence of JTRIG operation, whether you accept that or not.
It isn't. Stop.
Can I have that point?
No, you can't. Let me just lay it out from one more time. It isn't evidence of it, but it's perfectly reasonable for you to compare and contrast their behaviour with JTRIG behaviour. This is, according to the document, the behaviour of a JTRIG. If you then say, and here is our opposition, and here is how they behave. Do you see how it's the same as behaviour from bloody JTRIGS? Now, if you phrased it like that...
I see how it's similar to the horoscope of a Gemini as well.
If you phrased it like that, Anthony, I would agree. No. I'd agree. Because I can't find that to not be reasonable when you compare their behaviour to JTRIGS. But when you use it as evidence of them being JTRIGS, I have a massive objection.
Well, okay. You can have the objection, but it clearly says that the language of JTRIG's operation is characterized by the same characteristics that we...
Oh, you can just hear Eli. What's going on?
Tony, just give me 1 second.
He just wrote the same thing, and Adam, I'm trying to go there.
Oh, sorry, I forget. I have to sit in there quiet. So I thought I was in a little bit. Let me just make this one point. If I decided to attack Bob or whatever, what would be a great route for me to do? And if I decided to use and look up the JTRIG ways of how to attack them, would it mean I'm JTRIG, or would it mean I'm using sensible methods of attacking someone? It doesn't. It means I'm scummy, but it doesn't mean I'm necessarily government scum.
But if the attributes of JTRIG operations is characterized by these behavior traits, and then you show those behavior traits and apply them with evidence of them doing it, whether you accept that or contrast against it, it is still evidence of JTRIG operations.
Negative.
Yeah, okay.
So negative.
Correlation, not causation.
Adam
I'm not interested in negative.
correct.
It is evidence of JTRIG operations.
We heard you claim. We heard you.
No, it isn't.
Stop. Everyone stop. Got 5 people
is.
talking. QE, you're objecting. I object. You go ahead. Anthony, please don't rumpus him.
Yeah, I do. I think Adam summarized it perfectly. You got evidence of scummy, but not evidence of government scummy. You're using a composition fallacy is what you're using there, Anthony. You have, you have all
Can I finally go?
John is right.
Can you all just let QE get to the end? Hello. So I do not need to hear everybody. I just want to hear John. He's laid a claim of composition fallacy. Now I actually want to hear him lay it out. He's laid the charge. Now I want to hear it. Go ahead, QE.
Yeah, he's using a composition fallacy because everything he said is correct for JTRIG, except one thing. JTRIG is a government fucking agency.
Yeah, but it's not defined. Just because it's a government agency, the requirement to be JTRIG isn't the fact that they're a government agency, John.
Yes,
it's denoted by their behavior.
Yes, no, it's not. Yes, it is. They have to be a government agency. That's in the definition of controlled opposition.
Okay.
What?
No, they don't have to be a government agency.
Anthony, stop.
No,
Anthony, please let me try with you. Okay. Do you understand? Hello. I'm trying to lay this out for Anthony. Right. Do you understand the notion of beekeeping, Anthony? Play along, please.
Yes.
Right. Do you understand that if I laid out a document that detailed explicitly what beekeeping was in great detail, but at the top of the document, this particular beekeeping was for government-only honey. Therefore, this is actually a government document detailing how to keep bees and produce honey. Would you agree that if you took that document and said, look at all of these behaviours, this person is a government beekeeper? And then I go, hang on a second, this guy over here does all of the things on that list, therefore government beekeeper. And I go, no, but he isn't paid by the government. Yeah, but he follows everything on the list that a government beekeeper does.
That's not what I'm doing. That's a false equivalence.
Yeah,
I'm not
is what you're doing. It's exactly what you're doing.
It isn't. Let me explain why. Read this line, this top line. Generally, the language of JTRIG operations is characterized by. So we're not talking about beekeepers generally. We're talking about specifically JTRIG, right? If people in our circles are showing these characteristics, regardless of whether you consider them to be beekeepers generally or beekeepers of the government, they're still showing evidence of JTRIG operations in their behavior. And we can all evidence that.
Negative.
JTRIG behavior. Wait, I kind of
Yes, exactly.
I can give you that. Wait, hold on, but
Right.
you're missing what we're saying because you're agreeing with us. You couldn't stop, Anthony, because shit, man. It's JTRIG like, just like all of us have been saying. It's not evidence that they're from that agency. If you're saying that's not what you're saying, then I don't know why we're even arguing because we're all on the same page. Now, this is the kind of thing, like Nathan said earlier, that gets innocent men thrown in jail. Because the problem is that as soon as you read that paper, and I said this already, oh shit, you're characterizing my mom, bro, right? So you admit then? You can't use this as evidence that they are government controlled.
So if you're if you're admitting that your mum is generally characterized by behaviors such as discrediting people, promoting distrust, dissuade, deceive, disrupt, delay, deny, if you're saying that your mum displays these characteristics, that's not a particularly good mother, is it?
My brother-in-law does it too.
Shit too.
My brother-in-law
mom's
does
just
it.
like that too, Eli.
I have a member of my family that also.
So if your mum does it as well,
Anthony,
then we have
Anthony,
a bigger problem,
Anthony,
don't we? My mum doesn't behave like this.
Anthony.
But if your mum does,
Anthony. So you're giving the example. Nobody's allowed to respond, and we're on to your mother who doesn't. Yeah, I also have a family member who characterized perfectly by all of those things. My brother-in-law does all of those things. Yeah.
Okay. So your brother-in-law is distrusting. He promotes distrust, does he?
Yes.
Why are you acting like a baller? Should I call you a baller now?
I've got to, Anthony, I've got to address that now. Anthony, please, Anthony, what you're doing,
Nathan,
are you verbal diarrheaing?
Evidence connects them to a government agency, and this is the standard that connects them to a government agency.
You done filibustering?
That doesn't change it.
You done?
Ridiculous.
Not really. I can go all night.
Yeah, I know you can, but you're going through everybody. You're filibustering through everybody who talks.
Nobody's accepting
Eli was just about. Yeah, Eli had a point to make. I was just about to let Eli have his point again because you filibustered him also, and then tried to stop you, and then you couldn't stop. Eli, what was your last point?
No, I guess I was done. And further to what you're saying, well, these are characteristics of a government agent. Yes, what you're reading is characteristics of that particular agency. That's not saying that these people are of that agency. All you have to do is go, yeah, okay.
Yeah, but the point I'm trying to demonstrate upon demand of Nathan is that there is a connection to a government agency, and this is the connection. The behavior
we all disagree with you, Tony. You're the only one that actually believes in it.
Well, you can disagree with me if you want. That's fine.
Anthony has a point. I don't know what you can't deny.
Hold on, Brian. I just want to address Eli. Hold on, Brian. You can go next. I promise. Eli, the reason this is happening, I tried to illustrate this earlier, and I explained it and Anthony just paraphrased it, which is to say Anthony's looking to strengthen this argument, right? That's why he's doing this. So, Anthony, I'm halfway through my sentence. You are, because I asked you and you said, no, I'm trying to prove that they're actually part of a government agency. Yeah, that's the same as wanting to strengthen your argument.
It's not, Nathan. It isn't. I'm connecting them, right? You said to me there's no evidence that connects them to a government agency, and the evidence is the behaviour. That is the evidence.
No, it isn't.
Now, I'm not saying that the scummy players, you're saying that the scummy players that have those traits. I'm saying that behaviour does connect them to JTRIG. Now, you're distancing that, saying it's not. It's the correct standard to apply. That's where the debate is.
Okay, well, if you can undo my bumblebee example, where both government-paid bumblebee keepers and standard bumblebee keepers would both have the same description regardless if one's government-based or the other, and therefore them exhibiting the same behaviour doesn't prove that one is government-paid.
But if both bumblebee keepers exhibit the same behaviour and you're unable to distinguish between them the two, then both definitions are satisfied. Both beekeepers are both private beekeepers and of the government kind because they've got the same behaviour traits.
What the hell are you talking about, man? You're going way overboard.
No, I'm not going way overboard.
Yeah, you are. You're going.
The problem is the standard is not subjective. It is objective by their behaviour.
Maybe add a little bit of clarity to Anthony here. Just 1 second. Come on. Because everyone's...
Go ahead, Brian. Sorry.
Yeah. Thanks, Eli. Everyone's going against Anthony, but they're missing something here. Eli's example was Eli's mom, because Eli's mom behaves that kind of way when the subject is brought up. Now, most people will behave that kind of way, or a lot of people will behave that kind of way due to government and political indoctrination over time, right? That is the reason why they're behaving that way. But the difference is, Eli's mom has not spent 8 years in this arena. Whoever's off mute, could you please mute? Anthony, please mute. You're driving me up the wall, Anthony. Please.
I'm sorry.
So I just can't talk when there's all this other stuff. Right? So Eli's mom has not been in this arena for 8 years. So Anthony is right. If you're looking for a connection between their behaviour and a government entity, then what he's presenting is technically a connection, because they're not ignorant to the subject. I don't mean that in a bad way, but Eli's mom is going to be ignorant to the subject. She's only going to know whatever basic things people normally know. So they're not ignorant to the subject. So Anthony has a point. I don't know if I could call it evidence that it's a controlled opposition, but he's definitely making a connection with a government entity.
Yeah. Well, we're not denying the correlation. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We're saying, yes, that is a correlation you can use when you describe it that way.
Anthony.
Not going to be upheld in court.
Anthony, and whoever's decided to jump on top of Anthony's interruption. Go ahead, John.
Right. We're not denying the correlation. We're not saying that, yes, that is the behavior, right? We're just saying that there's no evidence that the government is paying them to do it.
No, that's not the argument that was being presented.
What?
Nathan said about the bank statement.
Yeah, it was.
No,
that is the argument.
I thought we've moved on from the bank statements point. It's not reasonable for somebody to obtain bank statements to prove a paper trail. We've moved on from that point.
Let me ask you flat out. Let me ask you flat out, so we could get. Let me ask you, for everybody that's listening, they probably lost the plot. Are you saying that Bob Nodell, at least, and probably would agree that they all, are you saying that he specifically, literally, at some point, put his pants on, got his wallet, which had his badge number ID in there, for this government agency that he works at, which he has attributes of, which he then goes out into the world and deceives people under that job title? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, okay. I believe that's exactly what
I don't believe that. I do believe it, but I don't know it. That's all.
I accept that you may not agree, and that's fine. But my view on Bob Nodell is that he's a planted agent in the same way that we have sleeper cells. You all know what the IRA is, the Irish Republican Army. We have sleeper cells in England of people that represent the IRA, and they intermingle in society as normal members of society. They're known as sleepers. They exist. I know some of them, right? They actually exist. It's not fiction. It is real world. In my opinion.
Shout out to who? Shout out to who?
What?
Shout out to Brian.
Yeah.
Brian will agree with me. There are sleepers for the IRA in England. Am I not right, Brian?
There are in a lot of places.
Can I bring it back to the point?
There are a lot of places outside of
we're nearly there.
Well, the point is, in my opinion,
correlation is not causation.
Maybe everybody jump on the interruption.
Look, you've said it, and I think the point may have been lost. That the point where I see the argument now is Tony's asking, is it fair to present evidence if I show somebody matches certain criteria? Does that matching criteria mean they are part of that group? Well, I think most of us are saying no, because if I, Tony, wanted to turn you into a cheeky little sex slave, and I employed MK Ultra techniques, and I had you in a dungeon, yeah, nice and obedient, it doesn't mean I'm MK Ultra. It means I use those techniques. So that's the point I think Tony, nearly there. That's the point I think we're making. And that's why we don't see your point when you cite that piece of evidence. Do you want to address that?
So if there's essentially a tick list of things traits that people display when they are an IRA sleeper. Now, just because somebody may not come out and admit it, or you've not got a bank statement that proves it, if they behave like it and act like it, and it essentially ticks certain boxes, they're going to be treated as it. That is what sleepers do, and that's how sleepers get away with being in society, but not really in society, because they're sleeping. That's exactly what Bob's doing, in my opinion. He ticks all of the tick boxes for JTRIG, and if you look at them objectively, you can't say that Bob's not really got any of them, or one or two of them.
Eli, you're rumpusing. Eli, he's trying to make his conclusion. He's built up to this, and you're just rumpusing the shit out of his conclusion. Thanks so much. Go ahead, Anthony.
It's the standard of the prosecution or the case against the person when they're accused of being a sleeper of the IRA in this example, that the prosecution have got to show all the evidence that leads up to the conclusion that they are correctly said to be IRA sleepers. Now, in this instance, we're talking about JTRIG, but it doesn't change the fact that if somebody's accused of being an IRA sleeper in England and are prosecuted in such a way, they're going to be presented as they're going to be presented or prosecuted as a sleeper, even though there may not be any direct evidence of it. It's all of the evidence, and then the case may collapse, or it may get convicted. or the guy may die miraculously in a light aircraft accident before he ever gets convicted. But just because Arwin says it's correlation, not evidence, doesn't mean that it's not evidence, because it is evidence. It's
no, it
evidence.
is.
No, it's not
completely. You're going by your own personal suspicion and mixing it up with your judicial system, Tony. What the fuck are you doing?
If it's not proof, then nobody can ever be convicted of anything to do with espionage or spying, because nobody ever leaves overt evidence that that's what they're doing.
Yeah, they are. And by the way, when it comes to espionage, the government then pursues and they use other methods, right? That's not a public judicial system.
Eli, he's actually in the middle of his statement. So just hearing you say Arwin, Eli. I'll do it next time you try and make a point. Yeah, he's managed to edge his way into the conversation. You've just got to yield to him, not completely ruin his point by talking through him, saying his name 50 times. He's managed to make his way into the conversation now. That's just how it goes. Go ahead, Arwin.
I'm just saying, when governments, because the public sector doesn't do it, when the government goes after spies, they use a different method, right? They use basically a different judicial system. We are dealing with the public sector and the judicial system that is on that sector. So you cannot compare the two. It's totally different. Mechanics, everything is different about it. I mean, you keep doing this, Tony. You keep just pulling in other things to try to reinforce your point. You've been proven wrong. Now, stand down, soldier.
Okay, thank you, Arwin. Go ahead, Eli.
Well, there was consent. Hold on a sec.
No, hell no. Hell fucking no. Hell no. Sorry. Because, no.
Yes.
Here's the thing.
I don't know.
The irony of all of this is that the way you're arguing, Anthony, is that of the what are the words now? Because it's so the CIA specific propaganda, or maybe not even the CIA. How far back does this go? Like when they were talking about the Hun, right? When the government was talking about the other, you know what they got people to do? They got people to analyze their neighbors in the way you're analyzing right now. And they want people to come to conclusions. And you know what that does when people come to these conclusions without evidence? All of this shit happens. And the irony is that you're doing it right now.
And all you're now doing is diluting the standard of evidence and saying that it's not acceptable to go this low, when the reality is you don't get overt admissions from these people when they're being deceptive like this, because that's the whole point of deception, to deceive. The reality is, if it barks like a dog and it walks like a dog and it shits like a dog, it's not circumstantial evidence to say it's probably a dog, because it's got all the traits of it. But if you want to dismiss the evidence...
Hold on, Arwin. Hold on, you can answer him once he's responded.
If you want to dismiss the evidence by way of circumstantial evidence, go right ahead. But what it does is permits the behaviour and ignores the behaviour that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
Hold on, Anthony. Arwin can go next, but no, you've just got a standard that's too high. You can highlight all of the behaviours. You can even contrast those behaviours with the behaviours of horrible government agencies who behave the same. By contrast, that makes your point strong. But as soon as you lay the standard of that makes them government-paid agents, it weakens your argument so much that I have to repel it rather than get behind it. That's how bad it is. But if you just lowered your standard to they are in opposition to flat Earth, even at that, what I would call the breaking point of the standard I'd agree with, like throwing the net that wide, I would still be in agreement with you. They're in our opposition. They're in flat Earth's opposition. Here's how they behave. Here's how I'm demonstrating it and can document it. And here is, by contrast and comparison, how JTRIGS do the exact same thing. I'd be behind you 100% if that's how it was put across. But when you say that means they are JTRIGS, I have to stand back and go, no, I can't stand behind this anymore at that point.
Okay.
Right, it's
so then
reification. You're reifying at that point.
Stop. Then what we do is we look at genuine opponents, actual scientists, not anti-flat earthers, actual scientists, and we look at their behavior traits and we say, do these people show dishonesty, deception? Did they promote distrust? Did they do all the JTRIG attributes? And you'll find that the answer is no. So are the people that we're questioning, that I'm pointing the finger at, are they demonstrating behaviors consistent with real scientists or real physicists doing the actual science thing and being honest, even if they're wrong? Or are they displaying the traits of JTRIG? Because if they are displaying traits of JTRIG, that's no different to barking like a dog, walking like a dog, and shitting like a dog. If the behavior like JTRIG, then the JTRIG, Nathan Arwin. But if they're not JTRIG, they're genuine science. So it's not difficult to distinguish which one we should apply. But if you want to give,
I'm done with this. I'm done with your rambling. I'm going to leave if you don't shut the hell up with this nonsense.
Or you can leave if you want.
Constantly reifying. I'm sick of it. Stop reifying.
If you want to give them,
stop it.
If you want to give these people the benefit of the doubt,
you keep intermingling personal research, like how do you do this logically? How do you figure out where somebody stands out there? With the freaking judicial system. Stop reifying these two different fields. I'm sick of hearing about it. You've been rambling about this shit for an hour. Stop.
If you want to lower the standard and give these people the benefit of the doubt, if you want to lower the standard by giving these people the benefit of the doubt, then you've got to accept their behaviors as okay.
No, I don't. Stop freaking reifying everything.
Don't. I've stood in direct. Hold on, let me just. I've stood in direct opposition of their behaviour, Anthony, and I can do so. I don't have to make a claim that they're government paid to do so. I can point out how bad they are. I can just show where they're wrong.
If you don't connect their behaviour traits with JTRIG, you must accept their behaviour is acceptable.
Negative. That's non sequitur.
Bullshit.
You have to. You have to.
Manipulation, Tony.
Not manipulation. I'm dealing with the point at hand. The problem is you people don't want to do it.
Doing that.
The problem is you people don't want to do it because you like, for whatever reason.
No, stop manipulating us with your bullshit.
Not manipulating. You can't have it both ways.
Okay, can Anthony and Sleeping Warrior, Anthony and Arwin
refuse to say their behaviour is consistent with JTRIG? It either is consistent or it's not. But if it's not, then you've got to condone their behaviour.
Nathan, did he call me you people?
He did.
Yes. I definitely called you you people. And Arwin.
You're not getting it right.
Okay, hold on. Go ahead, Brian.
I'm going to drop that.
Okay, Anthony and Arwin specifically. Go ahead. Who was it next? Brian, then John.
Yeah, I'll be quick about it. I want to give Anthony a little bit of support here because Anthony was saying the same stuff going back several years ago, and people weren't listening to him then. And what you could call as evidence has been building up since then. So he has consistently not actually been wrong with his opinion. Now, whether his opinion can be used in court as evidence, I don't know about that, but that doesn't mean that he has not been consistently correct.
About their opposition. Just one little qualifier. Then it's John. Hello. One little qualifier, then it's John. Yeah, he's been consistently right about their opposition to flat Earth or us or whatever he's showing demonstrably them being in opposition to. I can get behind it 100%. He's consistently built this evidence up of their opposition to the subject. And I'll get behind it. Until he says that means they're government paid agents. Then I have to walk away because I'll look stupid if I stand next to him at that point.
Exactly.
Misrepresenting what I'm pointing out, though. What I'm pointing out is that the behaviour is consistent with a known pattern. And that known pattern is either disputed by you guys because you don't like that for whatever reason, or it's complained about. But you can't have it both ways. Anthony, I
can. Let me tell you how. And then it's John.
Why is he saying that?
Just 1 second. Hello. Let me just respond to Anthony. If you compare and contrast, I can accept it wholeheartedly. It plants a seed, but you do have to put a couple of wiggle words in. It's just the way it is because you haven't got evidence to prove it. Therefore, all you can do is compare and contrast. And nobody's going to disagree with you if you did it that way.
But you keep saying that I've not got evidence for it, but we all know the evidence is there. If you want me to collect it and present
Shut
it
up,
to prove
Tony.
the point, I will do. But it isn't going to prove
I'm
right.
sick of you doing this.
Anthony, okay. Anthony, you've repeated that a few times, and Alwyn's right to moan. Go ahead, John.
What I was going to say is, Anthony, you're looking at this wrong at the moment, because we're agreeing with you. We're just saying that if you want to garner more support, all you have to do is leave controlled off of opposition.
I don't know.
And then, well,
controlled opposition is defined. They've got particular traits. Now, it's clear that you guys don't accept that, but it doesn't change the fact that those clear traits do exist. So those clear traits that do exist, that our friends do display, is the evidence that you guys don't want to accept.
No, we haven't not accepted it. No, we haven't not accepted it. That's wrong. I accept it. Well, let me assure you, I accept every piece of evidence you've demonstrated that shows their behaviour, that shows where they're wrong. I'll get behind it all. We're not rejecting it just because we say it doesn't prove they're a government agent. It does prove that they're in opposition. It does prove that their scummy behaviour is scummy behaviour, but it doesn't prove the government connection that you also want to strap on for no reason. It doesn't benefit your argument when you show demonstrably them being crap. Just show them being crap.
Right. JTRIG-like behavior, Anthony. That is so acceptable. But you don't have to call them a JTRIG to make that point. JTRIG-like. And I would back you.
If the elements of JTRIG-like behavior were identified as government agents, which they are, then
what if these people aren't? They're just simulating it. They're just using it to get their own little ground. They want their little Bob empire. We know they do, right?
We have
what
an
the hell
example
does
from-
government have to do with that?
So
They're
we had an
just
example
being
from
dicks
Elijah.
and taking the ground.
We had an example from Elijah. Elijah used his mum, and Nathan said, yeah, his cousin or whatever also displays these traits. What?
Brother-in-law.
Brother-in-law, whatever. So these people that display these traits, according to Elijah and Nathan, I would disagree that these people actually show these traits. Yeah, they might be scummy behavior. They might do things that are not great, but they're not consistent with the list of things that we spoke about before. Just because you accept that it might be that case with your mum and the brother-in-law doesn't mean it really is.
They are. Yes, they are, and I'll tell you why. Because they employ the same. Listen, everybody. I don't know about it. I'm sure I could. I'm sure I commit logical fallacies all the time. Here's the thing. When it comes to being aware of a conversation where you should be hyper-focused about what is true and what is not true, what can be justified as true and not true, then we start to focus on patterns of conversation that are fallacious, for lack of a better term. I can find it. So the thing is, if my mom uses the begging the question fallacy, for example.
Yeah, but that's not one of the traits.
Even better. Shut up. If my mom utilizes a fallacy isn't a trait, Dick. What's wrong with you?
It's a false equivalence. Your mom.
It's not a trait, so that's not the point that I'm trying to make. That you interrupted. So you're not listening.
I am listening. I'm addressing.
No, you're not listening because I said that there's a trait, but I haven't given it to you yet. So why are you interrupting?
Give it to me.
So don't interrupt. So
just give
if my mom commits, let's say, in what's the fallacy where because everyone else believes it, you believe it. What fallacy is that? Ad populum fallacy? Like, because of her fallacious reasoning in that instance, when you apply it to real world events, she can peddle propaganda that would make propaganda from a governmental agency, mind you. that will make her align with them because of this fallacious reasoning. 10 years down the line, if she doesn't address the fallacy, or that what she does is a fallacy, then she will be subject to doing the exact same thing consistently. That would not make her a government agent, though.
That's a false
I don't
equivalence.
know.
It's a false equivalence because
here, guys.
a logical fallacy.
I'll see you Monday.
A logical fallacy is not one of the traits of a JTRIG government agent. A logical fallacy is not one of those traits.
But that's not what I said. That wasn't the point. The point was that you can peddle government propaganda because your fallacious reasoning didn't stop you at the door from doing that. And if you did that consistently, I don't.
It's a false equivalence, Elijah.
Is he on drugs?
It is a false equivalency.
It's not one of the traits it's identified. If you were to come back to me and say, my mum promotes distrust of my Aunt Sally because my mum believes that my Aunt Sally is a prostitute, that would be a trait that might be argued to be consistent with JTRIG. But in itself, one argument, one element would not be sufficient. However, if your mum provided all of the other traits that go in that list, all against your Aunt Sally because she believed that she might be a prostitute, if all of those other things were consistent, which couldn't be applied against a prostitute, I might add, but if they could be, then I would say, yeah, your mum is behaving like a JTRIG. But because it can't be applied against being a prostitute for Aunt Sally, it isn't going to possibly work. But if the topic in question was something that was controlled by state, and the traits of that behavior are identified and the tick boxes are ticked, then unfortunately I would agree that your mum might actually be a JTRIG. She might actually be controlled opposition.
Outrageous.
But we can't do that with your mum because she doesn't display the behavior traits consistent in the list that identifies JTRIG behavior. But Bob Nodell,
how are you going to tell me? How are you going to tell me? Listen, just because I gave you some obscure example of what never actually happened doesn't mean you can sit here and justifiably say that my mom, someone you don't know, doesn't display certain characteristics, these characteristics in particular, that would have you call her a JTRIG like a dumbass.
That's why I said it was a false equivalence.
Well, because I was trying to make a point to you to elucidate that just because people align with governments because of fallacious reasoning doesn't make them government agents. So you can't apply this because you might unfortunately misdiagnose something.
And as I said, just because somebody aligns with a government position in itself is not one of the requirements that satisfies the JTRIG behavior. It's not one. It's a false.
Can I ask a question? Would a useful idiot be considered controlled opposition, or would they fall outside of controlled opposition, being a useful idiot?
Being a useful idiot is not one of the behavior traits of a JTRIG, so no.
Well, no, but all the characteristic traits of a JTRIG could apply to a useful idiot. I'm reading them right now. That's what a useful idiot would do too.
Yeah, but a useful idiot, you'd have to show where that useful idiot. Think of Pete Shea. He is a good example of a useful idiot. I don't think anybody would disagree with that, right? Actually, I can't think of a use for Pete Shea as a useful idiot. He's just an idiot.
To discredit. No, it's a reasonable example. If you said Pete Shea's a useful idiot because his disinformation and speculation makes us look terrible, right? Then you could say that serves the ends of people who want us to look like idiots.
Right. But in Pete Shea's behavior, does he tick the boxes for all the behavior traits? Think of a use for Pete. I don't think that Pete Shea is deliberately deceptive. I think he's just lunatic. He might be deliberately deceptive.
You're making our argument.
Yep, you are.
I'm not. I'm saying that he hasn't
got Anthony, I hated to do that to you. I hated to do that to you, man. I'm sorry. But yeah, you're making our argument now.
No, I'm not making your argument. I'm saying that he doesn't satisfy the criteria that is described as JTRIG behavior. Now, if you want to say that makes your argument, you can do, but it doesn't make it true. What I'm saying is, Pete Shea. Well, you're entitled to your opinion, and if it comes down to purely opinions,
how are you?
If it comes down to purely opinions, regardless of any evidence, right, then it means that nobody's ever going to be accused of being an IRA plant in the same way.
Negative.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Not then, John. Yeah.
Provided the evidence. You provided attributes, but you're missing.
Yeah. We can't provide evidence to this,
part
John.
of the fucking evidence, and you're gonna rumpus me because you know you're finished.
No, I'm not.
The whole thing is you have provided. You have no, I'm not. You have provided the evidence of opposition. This is very simple. There's no doubt about
evidence of opposition.
Hold on, Anthony.
It's not evidence of opposition, John.
Anthony, I can't hear him. Anthony, you just filibustering. Anthony, please.
He's lying.
Yes.
He's lying.
I'm lying.
You're lying, John. The standard of evidence that's being. I'm about to. The standard of evidence is not that they are opposition, as you said. The standard of evidence is that they are displaying the traits of JTRIG. That's the standard of evidence.
The evidence. That's the claim.
That would be the standard of evidence that you're saying is actually we need to show that they're opposition. No, we don't need to show that.
I did not say that. You're lying.
Make your point again and allow me to redress it.
I will say this again. We are not denying your evidence of opposition. It is clear.
I'm not providing evidence of opposition.
You didn't let me finish.
Yeah, because you misrepresented it again.
I am not.
A different point.
How dare you, sir?
I'm not presenting evidence of opposition, John. I'm presenting... Obviously, John's not able to listen. There is no conversation with John on this topic.
Obviously, that Anthony is not able to listen.
So we're now at an impasse where John repeats what I say. He is reduced conversation.
You keep talking over him. That's why.
Yes, Anthony, you do.
You're just being not sure.
Oh, right. So I'm the one that corrects the error that John's misrepresenting, and I'm the one that's talking over it. Right? No problem. You make whatever claims you want, John. I'll sit here and smile.
Anthony, both of you stop a second. Anthony, he started that off by saying, we wouldn't deny that you've presented evidence of opposition. Now, if you say, well, I'm not trying to present that. But Anthony, you've now rumpused me exactly at the same point that you rumpused him in my summary of what you were rumpusing. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you. Maybe you can't listen. It seems your projection of your inability to listen is obvious by now to an audience member. You can't listen. I'll try again. To summarise that which you've interrupted twice, once from QE and once from me, I'll try a third time. His statement started with, we wouldn't disagree that you've presented evidence of opposition. Now, you interrupted him to say, I'm not trying to present that. It matters not. He's summarising his own point about what you have presented. And you have assuredly presented evidence of their opposition. That's what you've done. Opposition as a government-paid agent, you haven't presented evidence of, though.
Right. It's a straw man argument. In no way at all have I ever said or presented any evidence whatsoever that they were opposition. I have contrasted that position. That is a textbook straw man argument. I did not do it.
Brian, this is why I just wanted to say real quick because the train is coming.
Just one second, Brian.
I want to say this.
Hold on, Brian. Hold on. Go ahead, Eli.
This is why Slit isn't dishonest, because now Sleeping Warrior has become my dear friend. He's acting the same exact way. And I'm not, just like I wasn't going to say that Witsit was this, that, and the third, I'm not going to say Anthony is this, that, and the third. Because clearly he's being serious, and clearly tensions are high, so for whatever reason, we're miscommunicating right now. This is so just throwing Witsit and olive branch. This is what he's doing, not what you think he's doing.
Oh, shit, now we're on to Witsit.
I don't class Witsit as Bob and Jaren. Maybe you guys do. I don't. I see him as kind of like he's too new to be classed as them. He's only been on the scene like recently. All right, it might be a year or two, but I don't class him as Bob and. So I'm not classing. Let's leave Witsit out of it for a minute. I'm refuting the claim that John says when I presented evidence that they're opposition. I did not. I presented the standard. I did not, John. That is a lie.
Yes, you did.
Fucking lying.
I asked you for the characteristics And you gave me deceive, deny, disassemble, distract. You gave me all those and said that they were obvious evidences that they were doing.
Correct. No, that's not evidence of opposition.
Correct.
It is.
There you go.
That's evidence of opposition.
That is not evidence of opposition, though, is it, John? That is evidence of JTRIG.
What did JTRIG do?
I think
They oppose
point
things.
Right. Opposite of
Technically, you're right, Tony. I'll give you that. Technically, there on listening, I'll give you that. If that's how you presented it as evidence against as JTRIG behaviour, now we may have perceived it like that, and we can interpret it like that. And what we're saying to you is, we can accept it as JTRIG behaviour. Can't accept it as proof of membership.
Right. And this is why I said, what evidence would you accept as proof of membership, to put it in that phrase?
What you got?
Because this is the because this is the hang on, wait, this is the standard of evidence to identify JTRIG behaviour.
I'll assess it. Anthony, I'm answering you. I'll assess it when you present it.
Yeah, but thankfully the standard is not based on Nathan Oakley's standard. The standard is presented as based on what I've got on screen right now, and it doesn't require membership. It requires behaviour traits.
It's absolutely based on Nathan Oakley's standard. There is no other.
Okay. Well, not according to this document, it's not, obviously. But let's just be clear. When I corrected John for presenting evidence of opposition, that is not what I did. That was a straw man.
That was horseshit.
And what he would accept.
And what did you present?
It's on fucking screen right now, John. Can you not see the screen?
In the beginning. Yeah, I can see it's a fucking government document.
Yeah. Well, not necessarily government document. This is written by somebody that's not government. This is behavioral science support for JTRIGS research effects and online human operations, written by Mandeep Kandami, PhD. He's a human system group information management departmentalist, whatever that is. I don't know what that is.
Agency.
What?
It's government. What the fuck? It has top secret on top. And JTRIG is a government agency.
Well, if the government document that I'm using identifies the behavior traits of government behaviors, that is the link that's being requested by Nathan to show the connection to government agency, because the behavior traits are the standard. It's not a payslip. It's not a money trace. It's not anything else. It's this. This is the doc. Unless there is something to show that it's not.
What the fuck are you talking about?
So obviously, John, you weren't here for the conversation.
Oh, no, I was obviously fucking here. So
you weren't. So if you have to ask, at this point, what the fuck are we talking about? It's clear that you weren't here.
I know what you're fucking talking about, you sorry fucking bastard. What are Jaron? You said Jaron was controlled opposition. Why?
Why?
Yep.
Because he satisfies the behavior traits that identify him as controlled. What?
That's your evidences. Deceit, deny, discombobulate, distract.
Yeah.
Yeah. The prosecution rests. You said I was in error about the evidences and what you were presenting.
Yeah, you were. I wasn't presenting evidence of opposition. I was presenting evidence of behavior traits that satisfies the connection that they are a government agency of some kind. That was what was asked of me by Nathan. I have done that.
Who was a government agency?
Anybody that displays these behavior traits.
There you go. The prosecution rests again.
No, the prosecution's got it wrong. Your prosecution was I presented evidence of opposition. That's incorrect. That's not what I did.
Brian, you agree with that?
Hang on. There's a few issues here, right? What Anthony's trying to convey is that he can show that their behavior is directly in line with this document and what is stated in this document as traits of JTRIG, right? It's not a fair comparison to compare someone's mother with having similar traits to these people. These people are not ignorant of the subject. They've been in it for 8 years and they've displayed this behavior and these types of traits for 8 years. So that's not. So hang on. Hang on. I'm not finished speaking. I'm not finished speaking. Right. So that's a false equivalency to bring your mother or a relative or friend or anything into it. The false equivalency.
I agree.
Yes, Anthony has a point when he says he's presenting a connection between their behaviour and this government entity. He has a point.
Yeah, nobody would disagree with him.
But Brian.
Yeah, but you
okay, go ahead.
No, stop. No, stop. No,
Nathan just moved the goalpost there.
No, we did not. No, we did not.
Nathan did. Not you.
No,
Nathan.
we did not. That's why I'm trying to say, Nathan, I was going to cut in to say what Nathan was about to say, but Nathan can say it for himself. Because no, the fuck we didn't, Anthony.
Go on then, Nathan. Carry on your sentence.
Which sentence would you like me to carry on?
The one that you just started, where you said nobody would disagree that they
agree with the character traits you've identified in our opponents in regards to Jaren and Bob in this example. You have identified character traits that can directly be ticked off on your JTRIGS list. I would wholeheartedly and 100% agree you have identified character traits that are in the JTRIGS list. Well done.
Great. So when you asked me to make the connection with government agent and you've just accepted that the list of tick boxes are satisfied, is that not satisfying your standard or your request for evidence?
Does that satisfy that you can compare their behaviour to a list of JTRIGS behaviour? Oh, it absolutely satisfies that.
There you go. Then the prosecution does rest.
So when are you going to prove that they are JTRIGS? Hello. So when are you going to prove that they are JTRIGS, though?
Well, you've just accepted that if their behaviour is consistent with the things that are in the list, you accept that that is the behaviour of JTRIG.
No, I accept that they behave as JTRIGs behave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, because they satisfy the requirements, you're saying that it's a correlation only, rather than accepting that it's that they actually satisfy the requirements.
You can show and demonstrate that they tick everything on that list.
Right. So that is the evidence in itself.
No, it shows that it ticks everything on the list. It doesn't prove that they're JTRIG.
Oh, so what you're saying is it needs a court to decide this, otherwise it's not binding.
No, I'm saying that meeting every single requirement on a list doesn't mean you are defined as the thing the list defines.
Yes, of course it does.
So if I'm a beekeeper and I meet every requirement for government beekeeper, because I keep bees in the same way and it's on the list in exactly the same, I tick every requirement right down to the shoes I wear. You're telling me that makes me government paid? No, it does not.
I've already addressed this, though. If you satisfy both criterias, i.e. government beekeeper against private beekeeper, you are both.
No, you're not.
Yeah, you are.
No, you are not.
You would.
Go ahead,
I was just going to say, if they were a government agent and they had these behaviors, we could call them a JTRIG. It's the government agent part we're having a hard problem with.
I know. I understand.
So I wanted to say that Brian, you keep saying he has a point, but nobody's disagreeing that they act like this agency, if these are the characteristics of this agency. Where we have a problem is when I asked him, does that mean that because of these characteristics, we can go ahead and say Bob is 100% assuredly, definitely, empirically, truthfully, the agent that puts on his pants in the morning and has a government badge that he uses to sign into the JTRIGS building. And Anthony said, yes, that's what we are not willing to say, okay, that's true. Are you, I mean, that's all we're saying. Like, we're not denying anything Anthony said. We're just saying, we don't know that. We don't know that he is actually a part of that organization. We can't say that he's a part of or affiliated with any particular organization without knowing for a fact that they are. So we
Nor
can't
are we denying that it's possible.
saying that.
Yeah, and we're not
Yeah,
denying
yeah,
it's
nor are we
possible
denying
either.
it. Yeah, right.
So what you're now actually arguing is if it barks like a dog and looks like a dog and walks like a dog, we're not 100% sure that it's a dog because it could actually be a giraffe.
Yeah.
It's a cat.
Yeah, because
Okay, Anthony, you've done that twice, so I can't. Hold on.
It can't be a cat because cats don't bark like a
Just
dog.
a sec. I heard the example. Hello, I heard the example. Have you seen the Monty Python sketch? In I think it's what's the one with Knights of the Round Table?
Life of Brian.
No, that's Life of Brian.
Holy Grail.
The Holy Grail, right? There's a scene in the Holy Grail when they bring a witch to the elder of the town. He might be a king, it doesn't matter, but he's the guy in charge. And he goes through a series of logical inferences, right? They want to burn her. Why do they burn her? Well, because obviously she's made of wood. We're going to be burning her, right? So if she's made of wood, how do we know if she's made of wood? Well, we have to compare her to something else that's like wood. What else is like wood? Well, a duck is like wood because they both float in water. So logically, if she weighs the same as a duck, then she's made of wood and therefore a witch, and we can burn her. So
burn her!
Sorry.
Okay. So what we're saying is, if there's a list of behavior traits and Bob satisfies them, and I don't think anyone really disputes that he does satisfy them, the issue is making the connection to the list of connected things that connect them to JTRIG, even though the list is expressly identified as the operations, as the language of JTRIG's operations is characterized by terms such as. So even though the list is identified as the JTRIG operations, you somehow don't want to make the connection to JTRIG because reasons.
Because you haven't proven it.
Yeah. Yeah, reasons.
There is no reason to not connect them because by satisfying those ticks, that is the connection that you're asking for.
It's not connection.
No, it's not a composition fallacy. It's an inclusion criteria satisfied by evidence that they are all doing the exact thing that's required to be the thing that I'm saying they are.
The evidences? What evidences?
You didn't give any.
We're working on the assumption that everyone accepts that these evidences do exist. And again, I'll repeat it because obviously you weren't here, John, even though you say you were.
You said you didn't provide any evidences, Sunshine.
No, I didn't. I said if I went away and collated all of the evidences for it to simply be dismissed, I wouldn't bother doing it. But if it was accepted that these evidences do exist, and I presented them, and then people said, yeah, okay, maybe they are dishonest, maybe they are trying to discredit, maybe they are trying to deceive. And I think we all accept that these evidences do exist.
Yes.
Then,
what evidence?
No, the evidence of them being... Stop. Hello. No, the evidence of those things do exist, but that doesn't constitute evidence of being a JTRIG. If you tick everything on the list, so you say, okay, do we have evidence that they deceive? Here's an example of them deceiving you. Yeah?
But
right.
the list...
Anthony, I'm not done. Anthony. So if you go down the list one by one, an example, by demonstration, them fulfilling everything on the list, what you will have done is demonstrate that they fulfill everything on a list that is also a list of things that JTRIGs do. That's what you'll have done.
Not really, but go on.
That's it. That's all you'll have done. Because you haven't... So you can't conclude, therefore JTRIG. You can't do that.
I would actually describe what you've just said as if these people satisfy all of these behavior traits, then they are behaving as JTRIGs.
Yeah, agreed. Then they are
JTRIG, Nathan.
No, not J. Stop.
Because somebody behaves as a giraffe.
Stop.
They're actually a dog.
Oh God, he won't stop. Yeah, I would agree. They are, as you phrased it, behaving as JTRIGs. Yeah.
Yes.
Do you know what the inclusion of the word "as" does?
Yes.
It means that it isn't actually. For example, when this currently being listened to by members is broadcast to the public, it will be as live. Does that mean it is a live broadcast? No, it means it's consistent with how it was recorded without edits, like it would have been if you were a member watching. You'll get to see it as the live members saw it, as live.
I think you'll find...
Anthony, I'm nearly done. What you're saying is they behave as JTRIGS. That doesn't mean they are JTRIGS. Doesn't mean this show is live when you watch it as a member of the non-membership public. It isn't live. They aren't proved as JTRIGS because they behave as JTRIGS.
If you look up the law, the requirements of having a TV license, it requires that where there is a recorded live broadcast and you watch it, you have to have a television license. It does not matter whether the broadcast that you're watching is recorded contemporaneous as the live event or after the event. The fact that it was recorded as live is considered in law to be live. So when you say, it's not live, well, the law says that it is live if it was recorded as live.
You're missing the boat.
No, I'm not missing the boat.
You're chasing a friggin' analogy.
Yeah.
For the detail. It's the as part.
First off,
you
are
Anthony, stop. Anthony. He's pointing at Anthony. He's pointing out
that the important part, not the particulars of the analogy.
Nathan, you stopped me, and I then let you continue.
It's because all we can hear is constant, non-stop Sleeping Warrior interruption to anything and anyone that isn't Sleeping Warrior. If it's not Sleeping Warrior, it's going to have Sleeping Warrior talking through it. He's pointing out that you've chased down and now argued with my analogy, rather than the point that as live is not...
No.
There we are again. It's not Anthony talking. So it's going to be interjected by Anthony because it isn't Anthony. I'll try again.
John has interrupted me before I finished to criticise an incomplete statement. That's what's happened.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what the law sees as live. Live, if you watch it after the fact, recorded live but not watched live, because there's a detail in the TV licensing that says if you're watching live TV, that's not what we are talking about. We're talking about as JTRIG versus is JTRIG.
Yeah. So you use the comparison of TV license and recording of live broadcast and contrasting when you watch it afterwards. It wasn't actually live, was it? Even though it was recorded live. So I dealt with that by saying if it was recorded live and you are watching it after the event, it is still considered as live. Now that is
as live.
Yes.
As live.
So you need the TV license.
He won't get it.
So
he won't get it. It's the second time. Second time. He won't get it. Yet you even said it this time.
I do get it, Nathan. I'm addressing it, but you're ignoring it. I've addressed how you gave an example of a live broadcast and said it wasn't really live, but it is considered as live legally. You can look it up. Well, in the same way that it's considered as live, if they behave in a way that's consistent with the behaviour traits of JTRIG, that makes them JTRIG. Because if it didn't...
And it makes it live, it makes the broadcast live. Anthony, it makes the broadcast live then. So because it's as live, we can consider it live, like it's happening now.
Correct, Nathan, yes.
No, you fucking retard. Something recorded isn't happening now, Anthony.
Oh, so we need to dig it up then that shows that you can.
Sorry, you think something recorded... Listen, Anthony. You think something recorded is live?
No, Nathan.
No, it's... it's not, Anthony. Anthony, thank you. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you. No, it's not live. They're not JTRIG. They're as JTRIG. Like as live isn't live.
So
it's not live. They're not JTRIG.
If your behaviour is as a murderer or as an accountant fraud or as any other behaviour, if your behaviour is as one of those things, that makes you one of those things, Nathan.
I love it. We got there beautifully. Beautifully. Eli, I've got this. Yeah, so if you behave as murderer, well, let's look at this list of murderers' behaviour. Very obnoxious, rude, entitled. All these, I don't know what characteristics of murderers are, but we're going to... It's only halfway through my example and it's not Anthony talking. Obviously, we need a bit of Anthony in me and my conversation.
False equivalence. incomplete. It's not the right description.
I haven't got to the end.
You haven't done. You haven't got to the beginning.
If your statement is going to be challenged, I have to summarise your statement, then challenge it, without Anthony being part of that challenge. Sorry, Anthony, that's how it works. No. Yeah, you said if you. Yeah, it's still Anthony talking. Yeah, it's still Anthony talking. Third attempt, fourth attempt, fifth attempt. How many more attempts to challenge what Anthony said? If you behave as a murderer, with the except. You're intolerable, Anthony. Your statement I'm going to challenge.
If you behave as a murderer.
Yeah, I heard it. Me summarising it doesn't mean that when I've summarised it, I need you to then carry on that. That's going to be challenged after I've summarised it. Yeah, behaving as a murderer.
Properly.
Yes, the fifth fucking time you've interrupted me.
Make your fucking point.
I can't! You won't shut the fuck up!
Make your fucking point.
I'm going to remove you if you don't. If you interrupt this next statement by telling me to make my point when I'm summarising yours, yeah, I'll remove you. There you are again. I can't have a conversation with you. You're now doing it again. 7th time.
Just
miserable bastard.
Point, Nathan, come on, for fuck's sake.
I can't. You are still talking.
Make your point.
Prick. Yeah, my point's you're a prick.
No, that's not your point. That's a false equation.
My new point is that you're a prick. That continually telling me to make my point while incessantly talking through me, preventing me from making it, is a prick behaviour. So what I've done for my audience's benefit is mute Anthony while I tell my audience what a prick he is as he continually talks through me, making my new point. That a prick demands that they make their point by shouting, make your point, through their point over and over again. That's prick behaviour. You're a prick.
What I'm doing. No, I'm not a prick. If you've got a murderer and displaying traits of a murderer, they've got to be traits of a murderer, not of something else. So let's go with what traits of a murderer we need. Firstly, they need to kill someone. That's a trait of a murderer. So if we've got somebody that's killed somebody, chances are they might have murdered them.
And if they're paid JTRIG, they need to be showed to be paid JTRIG, i.e. show them being paid as a JTRIG, if you're going to say they're a paid JTRIG.
I didn't say they were a paid JTRIG. I said...
yeah, you did. You said, if these traits, then JTRIG. That's precisely what you said, prick.
No, it's not what I said.
Yeah, it is. That's what you're here arguing, that they are JTRIGs based on your lists being fulfilled.
I said that they were...
That they're JTRIGs based on your list. That's what you're trying to prove.
Right. Let me respond.
What, by me chanting straight through the middle of you, but with a bit more control because it's my show now? Yeah, you, prick, are telling us they are JTRIGs based on your standard. No, not live just because we can describe it as live. Just because we can describe them as JTRIG does not mean they are JTRIG. And if they're murderers, i.e. you can show them holding a knife with someone dead, with them holding the knife in them, then if you're going to show that they're paid by the government, you need to show that they're paid by the government to be a JTRIG.
Well, there's a slight issue with this example. Hold on, Sleeping. Just act like you actually are friends and let some of us in here. So the problem with this example is that a murder is not the title of an entity, but JTRIG is. So here's the simple point that I hope you understand. Here's the simple point that nothing that I said was a lie, so you can't say it's true. And I'm not trying to prove your point. So whatever I'm doing is definitely not trying to prove your point. You don't have to interrupt me to say it's not true. Nothing that I said so far is a falsehood. Now, to my point, I think it would be proper to say, okay, this murderer is from the Justice League. Okay? So here's another murderer. They do all the things that murderers in the Justice League do. Therefore, that is a murderer of the Justice League. You can't do that. It could be a murderer of some other entity. You just can't do that. It's unreasonable.
Totally.
So when we have a list of attributes for a murderer, we have a dead body, we have a weapon of some kind, unless it's fists, and we have a motive. And if we have those three conditions satisfied, because we have a bloke and we have a dead body and we have the weapon and he's got a motive, Nathan's arguing, well, you can't say that that guy's a murderer. And I'm saying, well, hang on a minute. The conditions that require him to be a murderer are dead body, motive, weapon. And we've got those three things.
Okay.
Nathan says that's not realistic.
Stop there. Stop there. Stop.
Hey.
Hello. Can I just reply to him?
This just for one.
Hold on, Adam. Let me just reply to him. Just one sec. Okay. So, Anthony, within the confines of your example, right? I go and murder somebody in your house. Yeah? And in your house happens to be your wife who you hate. Like, you despise. Now, after I murder your wife, you come home, find the body, pick up the knife and go, oh my God. And then you move her a bit to try and find if there's anybody under the bed, for the sake of argument. And then you phone the police. And they come in and they find, what was the list you said, Anthony? Motive,
body,
weapon, and body. Ergo, you fulfill that list you gave. Ergo,
Correct.
You are fulfilling the traits of the murderer based on your example.
Correct.
Are you not?
Correct.
Can I interrupt? Because no.
I've just got to agree with him. Hold on. He's just agreed. Therefore, you are the murderer, Anthony.
Murderer. Exactly.
So what you're saying, Nathan, is you killed the wife, but I'm stood there over the dead body, so I'm in the right place at the right time. There is a dead body, and you can even argue that there's a motive.
Yep.
Do you think that person will get off with the charge?
It doesn't matter if they get off with it. It matters if they are or aren't. Like, if they are or aren't JTRIGS.
It does matter. It does. It matters.
You would lock innocent men up then?
Pardon me.
Then you'd lock innocent men up, Anthony.
You've headed down another analogy now, and if I can just pull it back, because the last analogy was quite useful. We're talking about the criteria for a murderer, and the fundamental one being the body qualifying murder, that dead body. That's the thing that makes it murder. Now, in all the things we've been talking about a paid shill, a paid
we haven't, though. We haven't, John. That's not what we...
Come on. Let me at least...
You're on your own, Adam. I've already lost my shit with him once.
We've been talking about controlled opposition.
Right, so let's stick with that phrase, controlled opposition. So, in this case, then, the equivalence, the dead body is the controlled. It's not the opposition. Yeah, we haven't got a dead body because we've not got any evidence. There is no dead body. The controlled bit is missing. All we've got is traits of people that would fit the criteria of a murderer if we had a dead body, but we still don't have a dead body.
John, Adam, those behavior traits are the dead body.
No, they're not. And I think this is the point. This is the point of this disconnect, that we see it. No, that's not evidence of a dead body. That's evidence of JTRIG-like behavior. But until we see a body, right, we can't say they are JTRIG, but we can say their behavior is like JTRIG-like. But it does not give them membership. What gives them membership is the dead body. And that's what we're saying. The evidence you've presented doesn't qualify as a dead body to us.
Adam, can I just check? You didn't take what I just said literally, did you? I gave a metaphor. When I said the behavior traits...
metaphor.
When I said, just clarify so I'm on the right page here. When I said that the behavior traits are the dead body, you understood that was metaphorical, right? It wasn't literal.
For a second there, that was me thinking there'd been mass murders.
Metaphorical within the metaphor.
Well, pardon me.
I wanted to answer the question.
Yeah,
Do you understand?
I'll ask for the re-clarification of the question, because I phrased it correctly. Are you saying, did I assume that was a metaphor within the metaphor, or was it a clear statement of you denying that was a dead body within the metaphor? I assumed you were saying, no, you were saying that is the dead body, and I'm saying it's not the dead body. Then within the metaphor, but no, your response wasn't
denying the behavior traits of JTRIG then?
No, I'm not. That's the point.
Yeah, you are.
No, I'm not denying the behavior traits of JTRIG. I'm denying that having those behavior traits means you have membership of it.
But it does, though. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a behavior traits list.
No.
Well, hold on. That's let me go ahead and give it to you as there are behavior traits of cheaters. They sneak around behind your back. You don't see them at certain times that they should be home. You know, and my wife's doing all these things. So I divorce her. Am I right? Because she has the behavior traits like a cheater. I mean, it doesn't matter that she was actually out buying my birthday present and didn't want me to know, but you see the problem.
Oh my God. I broke
People
oh
do
my
get
God.
divorced on the grounds
my
of
baby's
unreasonable
mom and I.
behavior all the time. And that would constitute unreasonable behavior if it was part of a pattern that she was consistent with.
It doesn't make her an adulterer, though, does it? It makes her deceptive, deceitful. Yeah.
Right. So what would then happen then? So the accusation of
she's an adulteress.
Yeah, but then what would happen? What would happen is she would ask to explain her side of it, and she would say, "No, I was always going here. Look, this is where I was actually going." And then there would be evidence to the contrary, right? Where's the evidence to the contrary of their behaviour is not consistent with being a cheater?
Okay, this is brilliant, Anthony. This is great. This is great. So, okay, we've got an example where we're saying the standard you've set's too high. Now, in this case, this is perfect. So we've got a woman who's just horrible, right? And you can show that she's pure evil with examples of pure evil, right? And you come to us and you go, right, an adulterer has all of these characteristics. Somebody who cheats on their husband, and she's married to a man. There's her husband, right? And all of the things that you can demonstrate prove beyond certitude that she's evil, a liar, deceitful, vindictive, underhanded, right? And you can prove all of those things. But then when you present all of that, which you can prove, you then say, therefore she's an adulterer. And everyone goes, where did you show her shagging another guy, though? And you go, everything she did is the characteristics of an adulterer. You go, yeah, but you haven't shown someone's cock in her. And you go, well, that's too high a standard. Well, unfortunately, no. Until you show her in bed with another guy, you're not going to be able to convince me she's an adulterer, even though she fits every character trait. However, there's an overriding point. Whoever's interrupting, right? The strength of what you had anyway was so good that any reasonable man you presented it to would go, I agree. Scum, deceitful, underhanded, evil, vindictive, because you could prove all of those things. But then you went and ruined it by claiming therefore adulterer.
No. I went and supported it with citation that defines what is the behavior characteristics of JTRIG. And for whatever reason, you don't for whatever reason, you don't think that's acceptable. That's fine. If you don't think that the list of characteristics of behavior traits for JTRIG is an acceptable standard, that's your opinion. And you're
standard for what? For them being a JTRIG? No, it isn't an acceptable standard for them being a JTRIG.
Correct. If you don't accept the list of behavior traits for JTRIG as being the acceptable standard for the behavior of JTRIG, if you don't accept that, that's your opinion.
That's something else altogether. No. Comparatively, again, I wouldn't deny that having those characteristics mean you're not a JTRIG, which is what you just posed. I wouldn't suggest that either. I would say you've satisfied that they fit all the criteria. You can evidence all of the list of things if you wanted to go away and collate it, which you're threatening to do for some reason. Great. I'll agree with them all as you tick them all off. But at the end, when you say therefore they are adulterers, Anthony, I'd go, no, you haven't satisfied that criteria, unfortunately.
So then you're denying the list of JTRIG attributes that make them JTRIG.
No, I'm not.
What?
No, you missed
yes,
it.
You are.
No, I'm not.
You are.
No, I'm not. If you tick, Anthony, you say they're deceitful, then you show them being deceitful with an example. I'd be a fool to deny that. But when you go, because of that example, they're adulterers, I'd say, no, they're not. That doesn't meet the standard of adulterer. There's a different standard for that. But it does prove that they're deceitful.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so I'm not denying that. You just said that I'd be denying that when you showed it and proved it. I wouldn't be.
But you're not taking the next step, though. You're ignoring
Why do I have to do that? I don't have to take the next step that you've assumed with your opinions. I don't have to do that.
No, not my opinions. Not my steps. No. This is the list of behavior traits, Nate. Not Riley's list. The list of traits that are JTRIG, right? You're not connecting them.
That's not in contention. That's not in contention. He's saying why connect that to an entity, a government agency, though. What, like, I can say they act like them. They have the same behaviors as them. They may as well go ahead and get an application over there. But why do I have to then take the next step? Hold up. Not taking that next step does not mean that Nathan or any of us deny that they have those traits. And you know what? That's the only thing that's pissing me off. Is you keep saying that if we don't accept that they're literally government issued ID'd up, then we're denying that they have all these traits. No, but the point is that no, stop. You're saying you made the claim that if it quacks like the duck or if it barks like a dog, then the quacking thing is a duck and the barking thing is a dog. And that's your point. That's your claim. We're saying, yeah, well, I mean, it could be not that. It could be like that.
A wolf or a goose.
Not be that. However, they're acting like they have that behavior. Fine. And you're saying, well, if we don't call them a dog or a cat, then that means that we deny their behavior. No, we don't. Why do you just stop saying that, and everything would be all right? Because I don't know why you're doing that.
Right. That was an Arwin style rant. The one point that you made there was concisely said by one sentence. Why are you connecting them to being a JTRIG rather than identifying the behavior? And the answer to that is because the list of behavior traits identified to be as of a JTRIG agent are satisfied. If you don't agree with that, then you are denying that JTRIG exists essentially.
No, we're not. No, we're not. No, that's annoying. No, we're not.
No, you are.
We're not denying that you've satisfied the list. We're not denying that the list is demonstrable as a JTRIG behavior, or that the behavior isn't of JTRIGs if they are JTRIGs. None of those things are being denied just because we say there is no connection to prove that they are as that list describes. Just because they meet every single criteria. I'm going to give you one last example. If you've got something that's a frame, a car, that's incredibly fast, yeah? And handles beautifully, so you're going to take a Subaru Impreza with a really well-tuned engine that can do 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, and you dress it up as a Ferrari. In other words, you cover it in Ferrari body panels and make it look exactly like a Ferrari. So it not only behaves like a Ferrari and handles like a Ferrari, it looks just like a Ferrari. Now, if you say to us, right, so I'm going to say the guy who's got the Subaru Ferrari, that's not really a Ferrari, I'm going to say, because it's got all of the things that you can attribute to a Ferrari, this is now a Ferrari. And if you say it's not, then you deny that it's got the same attributes as a Ferrari, because I can show you it going around a corner at exactly the same pace as a Ferrari. I can show it accelerating at exactly the same pace as a Ferrari. I can show a picture of it next to a Ferrari and they'll look identical. Therefore, it's a Ferrari. It meets every criteria. And I go, no, that's a step too far, because it isn't a Ferrari, even though it meets every single thing in the criteria list.
Okay. So there are 4 ways to interpret when words are used, the English law. So if you're American, you're going to have to just disregard this because it might not be the case in America. But in England, there are 4 ways and we interpret the meanings of words. And if we use the phrase Ferrari and someone's intentionally made their car look like a Ferrari when it's not one, or they've made their car not look like a Ferrari when it is one, if there is deception connected to that, it will be treated as the Ferrari. We've seen it countless times. Now, does that mean it's literally the Ferrari? No. Does it mean that it's treated as the Ferrari? Yes.
Yeah, that's our point. So we don't literally treat them because they are JTRIGs, but we can demonstrate them to be like JTRIGs.
Right, but that person would still end up in jail then, though, Nathan.
Who cares? This isn't a legal standard.
Yeah, but this is the right. So what standard are we applying then? Are we applying a colloquial?
Evidentiary.
Non-legal?
Evidentiary.
Evidentiary. So then the evidence is required then, because there is no requirement that you catch them murdering the body. There is no requirement that you catch the Ferrari. There's no requirement.
I understand.
That you do
No,
anything.
I'm clear now. I've been very unreasonable. So in other words, we don't have to prove that they are actually government JTRIGS to show that they're government JTRIGS.
Correct. There's no requirement to show participation or inclusion or whatever the word was. The requirement is satisfied by their behavior traits. That's because, and why is that? It's because nobody that's an IRA sleeper will walk around wearing an IRA sleeper uniform to show membership. They hide that bit. So if the standard is to show membership, to prove membership, you're never going to do it because it's a covert operation. And if you think that's the standard to prove covert assembly, you're not going to be able to ever prove it unless, I don't know how you'd even do it, because your standard seems to be disproportionately high. But how would you actually prove JTRIG membership?
Sorry, what does
membership
Anthony? Sorry, just what does covert mean?
Hidden, secret.
So you want it to be a non-secret secret?
No, you want it to be a non-secret secret.
Do I?
Projection, Nathan. You're saying that I can't prove that they're membership, right?
Correct.
How would I actually do that without showing the
Not my
letter of
problem.
acceptance
Not my problem. I'm not claiming it.
Yeah, it is your problem.
No,
though,
not
because
really.
If you're trying to
Really,
make that
it isn't.
standard
It
the
really
standard,
isn't.
When the standard is identified based on behavior, and I point that out, and you say, no, this is your standard, which is what you have done. It's not my standard, Nathan. JTRIG's behavior is identified based on behavior, not based on membership.
Yeah, and you can prove that they have JTRIG behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then that's all that's needed.
That's awesome, but you're missing the concession you've been given. All you have
I'm
to
not.
do is the word.
I'm not, John. I've listened to what you've said, and I each time you've given me your concession, each time I've said it was a false equivalence. Not you, but Elijah. So I am listening to what you're saying. I'm saying that the standard is already satisfied by behavior. It's not required to prove membership.
Well, no, I ain't saying that. I'm saying all you have to do is switch your language slightly and change the word they.
I don't.
JTRIG to.
I don't know, John. It isn't required.
Okay, with that, I'm going to say another massive, enormous, huge thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's extended, live, members-only stream possible. If you are watching this after the fact on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering stream, then thank you very much for tuning in, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, joining as a member, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.